One night, this bride discovers her mafia husband murdered her father, but her face is identical to the woman he loved. Most. Serena Vale never imagined a wedding dress could become a prison. But tonight, standing before Lucien Devereux, the city's most ruthless crime boss, she realizes she's not just paying off her brother's debt. She's stepping into a deadly 15-year conspiracy. And her face is the key to unlocking it all. Follow this story to the very end. And don't forget to like and comment the city you're watching in so I know how far this story has progressed. Rain didn't just fall that night, it attacked. Each drop hammered the stained glass windows like bullets trying to break through. And inside the cathedral, the air tasted like old incense and fresh fear. Serena Vale's hands shook so badly she had to press them flat against the white silk of her wedding gown just to keep them still. The fabric was cold, expensive, wrong. Everything about this moment was wrong. She could hear her mother crying somewhere behind her in the pews. Soft, broken sounds that made Serena's chest tighten until breathing hurt. She wanted to turn around and look, wanted to mouth the words, "I'm sorry," but she couldn't move. Her legs felt like they'd been filled with cement. The veil covering her face was so heavy it made her neck ache. And beneath all those layers of silk and diamonds and lies, her heart beat so fast she thought it might crack a rib trying to escape. 3 nights ago, her brother Marcus had done something unforgivable. He'd stolen $4 million from people who didn't forgive debts, people who made examples out of families, people who turned entire bloodlines into warnings. Now Serena was standing at an altar about to marry one of those people. The cathedral was too quiet for a wedding. No music, no laughter, just the rain and the occasional cough from someone in the sparse crowd. Most of the guests weren't guests at all. They were soldiers. Men in tailored suits with empty eyes and guns hidden beneath expensive jackets. She could feel them watching her, judging whether she'd run, calculating how fast they could catch her if she tried. She wouldn't run. Marcus was somewhere in this city with a broken jaw and 2 cracked ribs, alive only because Serena had agreed to this. Their mother was drowning in medical bills she'd never pay off. Their father had been dead for 6 years, and even from the grave, his gambling debt still haunted them. The Vale family was cursed. Serena had always known that. She just never imagined the curse would look like a wedding. "He's coming." The voice came from her left. Serena flinched and turned her head slightly. An older woman stood there dressed in black, her silver hair pulled back so tight it made her face look like a skull. She wasn't smiling. Nobody in this place smiled. "Stand straight," the woman said. Her accent was European, clipped and cold. "When he lifts the veil, don't look away. Don't cry. Don't speak unless he asks you a question. Understood?" Serena's throat was too dry to answer. She managed a small nod. The woman studied her for a moment, eyes sharp as broken glass, then turned and walked back down the aisle without another word. The doors at the back of the cathedral opened. Serena's stomach dropped. She didn't want to look, but her body betrayed her. Her eyes moved on their own, dragging her attention toward the entrance where a figure stepped through into the dim light. Tall, dark suit, shoulders that filled a doorway. The kind of presence that sucked all the air out of a room just by existing. Lucien Devereux. Even from this distance, she could feel the weight of him. The stories people told about this man weren't stories. They were warnings. He'd built an empire on blood and fear, ran half the crime in the city from the shadows. Politicians answered his calls. Cops looked the other way. Rival families disappeared when they challenged him. And 15 years ago, someone had murdered his father in a deal gone wrong. Lucien had spent a decade and a half hunting for the people responsible. Word on the street was he'd found most of them. What he'd done to them after that, nobody talked about it. Not if they wanted to keep breathing. He started walking down the aisle. Slow, deliberate. Every step echoed through the cathedral like a countdown. Serena's pulse hammered in her ears. She tried to swallow, but her throat wouldn't work. The veil in front of her face turned everything hazy, but she could still see him getting closer, could still see the way people in the pews went rigid when he passed. Even his own men looked nervous. She'd seen photos of him before tonight. Marcus had shown her, drunk and panicking, trying to explain who he'd stolen from and why they were all going to die. In those photos, Lucien had looked dangerous but distant, handsome in the way statues were handsome, cold, untouchable. In person, he was worse. He reached the altar and stopped 3 feet away from her, close enough that she could smell his cologne. something dark and expensive that made her think of smoke and leather, close enough that she could see the sharp lines of his jaw and the way his black hair was slicked back perfectly despite the rain outside, close enough to see his eyes. Gray, not blue, not green, just gray, empty and depthless like fog over a graveyard. He looked at her for a long moment, didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at the veil covering her face like he could see through it into her skull and read every thought she'd ever had. Then he reached up and lifted the veil. The entire cathedral went silent. Not the kind of silence that happens when people are waiting for something. The kind that happens when something's gone wrong, when the script has been thrown out and nobody knows what comes next. Lucien's hand froze halfway through, pushing back the veil. His fingers tightened on the fabric. His whole body went rigid. For 3 seconds, 3 impossibly long seconds, he just stood there, staring at her face like he'd seen a ghost. The gray in his eyes wasn't empty anymore. It was burning. Serena didn't understand what was happening. She could feel the tension rolling off him in waves, could see the way his jaw clenched so hard a muscle jumped beneath the skin, could see his chest rise and fall too fast beneath the perfectly tailored suit. For the first time in years, the king of the underworld looked shaken. Someone in the pews shifted. A chair creaked. The sound snapped something in Lucien, and he blinked, the mask slamming back down over his face so fast Serena almost thought she'd imagined the whole thing. Almost. But his hand was still gripping the veil too tight, and his eyes were still locked on hers like he was trying to solve a problem that might kill him if he got the answer wrong. Where? His voice came out rough. He stopped, cleared his throat, tried again. Where were you born? The question hit her like a slap. That wasn't how weddings worked. That wasn't what grooms asked their brides at the altar. But this wasn't a wedding. Not really. So she answered. St. Mary's Hospital, downtown. Your mother's maiden name. I don't... Why does that matter? His eyes narrowed. Answer me. The command in his voice made her flinch, but also lit something angry in her chest. She was already giving him everything. Her freedom, her future, her life. He didn't get to bark orders at her like she was one of his soldiers. Moreau, she said. The word came out sharp. My mother's maiden name is Moreau. Happy? She wasn't ready for what happened next. The color drained from Lucien's face, not slowly, all at once, like someone had opened a valve and bled him dry. He took a step back, then another. His hand dropped from the veil and hung at his side, fingers curling into a fist so tight his knuckles went white. No. The word was barely a whisper. No, that's not possible. What? Serena's heart kicked against her ribs. What's not possible? He didn't answer. He was breathing too hard now, chest heaving like he'd just run a mile. The gray in his eyes had gone dark. Storm dark. The kind of dark that came before something violent. People in the pews were starting to murmur. One of Lucien's men, a broad-shouldered guy with a scar running down his cheek, stepped forward and said something low in a language Serena didn't recognize. Lucien ignored him. He was still staring at Serena like she'd just crawled out of his worst nightmare and asked him to dance. Elena. The name left his mouth like a curse. You look exactly like Elena. I don't know who that is. Moreau. He said her mother's maiden name like he was tasting poison. Elena Moreau, she was... He stopped, shook his head, turned away from Serena and ran both hands through his hair, destroying the perfect styling. When he turned back, his face was a war zone. Rage and grief and something that looked dangerously close to panic, all fighting for control. How old are you? He demanded. 23. Do you have family in France? Cousins? Aunts? I don't know. My mother doesn't talk about her family. Serena's voice was rising now, fear bleeding into anger. What the hell is going on? Who is Elena? Lucien closed the distance between them in 2 strides. He grabbed her shoulders, not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough that she couldn't pull away. His face was inches from hers and she could see everything in those gray eyes now. The cracks in the armor, the wounds underneath. The kind of pain that didn't heal because it had carved itself into bone. Elena Moreau, he said slowly, was my father's fiancée. 15 years ago, 2 weeks before they were supposed to get married, someone put 3 bullets in his chest and left him bleeding out in a warehouse by the docks. Elena disappeared the same night. Nobody ever found her. Nobody ever found the shooters. For 15 years, I've been trying to figure out who killed him and where she went. He paused, studied her face like he was memorizing every detail. You have her eyes, her mouth, her... Christ, you could be her daughter. Serena's mind was spinning. I'm not. I'm not anyone's daughter except my mother's. I don't know anything about your father or Elena or... Then why do you look exactly like her? I don't know. The shout echoed through the cathedral. Serena was shaking now, not from fear but from the weight of everything crashing down at once. This wasn't just about Marcus's debt. This wasn't just about some arranged marriage to pay off stolen money. She'd walked into something so much bigger and darker than she'd imagined, and she didn't even understand the rules. Lucien let go of her shoulders and stepped back. He stood there for a long moment, jaw working, eyes distant like he was running calculations in his head. Then he turned to the man with the scar. Get everyone out, now. Boss, the ceremony... I said, get them out. The command was quiet, but it cut through the cathedral like a blade. The scarred man nodded once and started herding people toward the exits. Within minutes, the pews were empty. Serena's mother tried to stay, but two men in suits gently ushered her out, her sobs echoing even after the doors closed behind her. Then it was just the two of them, Serena and Lucien, a bride and a groom standing at an altar in an empty cathedral, while rain hammered the windows and something dangerous hung in the air between them. Lucien moved toward one of the side rooms. Come with me! It wasn't a request. Serena gathered up the heavy skirts of her wedding gown and followed him, her heels clicking against the stone floor. He led her into a small sacristy, wood-paneled walls, a desk covered in papers, shelves lined with old books. He closed the door behind them and locked it. The sound of the lock sliding into place made Serena's stomach clench. Sit, he gestured to a chair. I'll stand. His eyes flicked to hers. For a second she thought he might argue, but then something like respect crossed his face and he nodded. Fine. He moved to the desk and started pulling out his phone, fingers flying across the screen. Serena watched him, trying to understand what was happening, trying to figure out if she was in more danger now than she'd been 10 minutes ago. Your mother, Lucien said without looking up. Does she have any photos from before you were born? Family albums, documents? Why? Because if you're connected to Elena Moreau, I need to know how. I need to know why you're here. Why now? He looked up, and the intensity in his gaze made her take a step back. 15 years I've been hunting for answers, and you show up wearing a face that should be dead or hidden or... He stopped himself, shook his head. I need to know who you are. I'm nobody, Serena said. The words tasted bitter. I'm just a girl whose brother made a stupid mistake, and now I'm paying for it. You're not nobody. He said it like a fact, like he could see through all her defenses straight into the truth underneath. Nobody doesn't have Elena Moreau's face. Nobody doesn't make me feel like I'm staring at a ghost. Serena wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the heavy gown. So what happens now? You call off the wedding? Send me home? Lucien's laugh was harsh and humorless. Send you home? So you can disappear like Elena did? So I can spend another 15 years wondering if you're alive or dead or hiding something? He shook his head. No, you're not going anywhere. You can't just keep me. I can do whatever I want. His voice dropped to something low and dangerous. Your brother stole from me. Your family owes me a debt. The only reason any of you are still breathing is because I allowed it. So yes, I can keep you. The question is whether you want your family to stay safe while I figure out what the hell is going on. It was a threat wrapped in a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. Serena met his eyes, lifted her chin. Then I guess I'm staying. Something flickered across Lucien's face. Surprise, maybe, or approval. But it was gone before she could name it. He nodded once. Good. We leave in 20 minutes. Pack light. Everything else you need will be provided. Leave? Leave where? My home. The estate outside the city. He moved toward the door, then paused and looked back at her. And Serena? She hated that he knew her name, hated the way it sounded in his voice, intimate and possessive and wrong. What? If you try to run, he said quietly, I will find you, and when I do, your brother won't wake up the next morning. Then he was gone. Serena stood alone in the small room, surrounded by wood and old books and the smell of rain coming through a crack in the window. Her wedding gown suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Her chest ached. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She thought about her mother's face, about Marcus lying in some hospital bed with his ribs taped up and fear in his eyes, about the life she'd had 3 days ago, boring and small and safe. All of it was gone now, burned away in the space of one bad decision and one awful coincidence. She looked like Elena Moreau, and because of that, she'd just been pulled into a 15-year-old murder that might get her killed before she ever understood why. 20 minutes later, Serena was sitting in the back of a black SUV with tinted windows so dark she couldn't see outside. Lucien sat beside her, silent and tense, his phone pressed to his ear as he spoke in rapid-fire commands to someone on the other end. She caught words like security and background check and find everything. 2 other SUVs flanked theirs. A convoy rolling through the rain-slicked streets of the city, heading toward the outskirts where the buildings gave way to cliffs, an ocean, and houses that cost more than entire neighborhoods. Serena pressed her forehead against the cool window and tried not to think about what came next, tried not to imagine what kind of place Lucien Devereux called home, tried not to wonder if she'd ever see her family again. The city lights blurred past, red and gold and white smearing together like paint. She'd been a prisoner for less than an hour, and already she felt like someone else, someone smaller, someone afraid. The SUV climbed a winding road carved into the cliffs. Rain battered the windshield. The ocean roared somewhere below them, invisible in the dark. And then, through the sheets of rain, Serena saw it. The estate. It wasn't a house. It was a fortress. Stone walls rising 3 stories high, surrounded by iron gates and floodlights that cut through the rain like searchlights. Armed men stood at the entrance, rifles slung across their chests, faces hidden beneath hoods. The gates opened as the convoy approached, and they drove through into a courtyard big enough to fit 50 cars. Lucien ended his call and pocketed the phone. "Welcome home," he said. The words felt like a knife sliding between her ribs. The SUV stopped. One of Lucien's men opened the door, and rain immediately poured in, soaking the hem of Serena's gown. Lucien stepped out first, then turned and offered his hand. She didn't take it. She climbed out on her own, her heels splashing in puddles, her hair plastered to her face within seconds. The wedding gown was ruined now. Good. She hoped it rotted. Lucien led her up a wide staircase toward the main entrance. The doors were massive, dark wood reinforced with iron, and they swung open as they approached. Inside was warmth and light and marble floors that reflected everything back twice as bright. Serena stopped just inside the threshold and stared. The foyer alone was bigger than her childhood apartment. A chandelier hung overhead, dripping crystal like frozen rain. A staircase curved up toward the second floor, the banister polished so bright she could see her face in it. Paintings lined the walls, old and expensive and probably stolen. Everything smelled like wood polish and money. "This way," Lucien's voice pulled her back. He walked deeper into the house without checking if she followed. She hesitated for a moment, then gathered up her soaked skirts and went after him. Her heels clicked against the marble. Somewhere in the house she could hear voices, doors opening and closing, the hum of a life she wasn't part of and never would be. Lucien stopped in front of a set of double doors and pushed them open. "Your room," he said. Serena stepped inside and froze. It wasn't a room, it was a suite. Bedroom with a bed big enough for 5 people. Sitting area with a couch and chairs. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean cliffs. A bathroom visible through an open door, all white marble and gold fixtures. Closets that probably had more space than her entire apartment back in the city. "You'll stay here," Lucien said. "The windows are reinforced. Don't try to break them. The door's locked from the outside. Don't bother trying to leave without permission. There are guards posted on every floor. If you need something, ask. If you try to run, you'll kill my brother." Serena turned to face him. "Yeah, I got it." His jaw tightened. "Get some rest. We'll talk in the morning." "Talk about what?" "About Elena. About your family. About why you look like someone who's been dead for 15 years. He stepped back toward the door. "And Serena?" She didn't answer, just stared at him. "I'm not the monster you think I am," he said quietly. but I will do whatever it takes to protect what's mine. Remember that." Then he was gone. The door closed behind him. She heard the lock click into place. Serena stood alone in her gilded cage and finally let herself cry. She didn't sleep. How could she? Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Lucien's face when he lifted her veil, saw the way the color had drained from his skin, saw the ghost of Elena Moreau staring back at her from his eyes. She spent the night sitting by the window, watching the rain hammer against the glass and the ocean churn below the cliffs. Somewhere in the house, she could hear footsteps, voices, the low hum of a life that never stopped moving even at 3 a.m. By the time dawn broke pale and gray through the storm, Serena had made a decision. She wasn't going to wait for Lucien to figure out who she was. She was going to find out first. If Elena Moreau was the reason she was trapped here, then Serena needed to know everything about her, needed to understand what had happened 15 years ago, needed to figure out if the resemblance was just a coincidence or if there was something darker hiding in her bloodline. And if she had to dig through Lucien's secrets to find the truth, well, he'd locked her in a fortress full of answers. He just didn't know she planned to steal them. Morning came, but the storm didn't leave. Rain still hammered the windows when Serena finally gave up pretending she might sleep. Her eyes burned. Her body ached from sitting in the same position for hours. The wedding gown lay in a soaked heap on the bathroom floor, where she'd finally peeled it off around 4 a.m. She'd found clothes in the closet, expensive things with tags still attached, all in her exact size, which made her skin crawl, and pulled on jeans and a sweater that probably cost more than her rent used to. She stood at the window and watched the ocean throw itself against the cliffs below. White foam, black rocks, the kind of violence that never got tired. Somewhere in this house were answers, files, documents, photos of Elena Moreau, evidence of what happened 15 years ago. Lucien had spent a decade and a half hunting the truth, which meant he'd collected pieces of it, kept them somewhere, studied them in the dark hours when ghosts wouldn't leave him alone. Serena needed to find those pieces before he decided she was one of them. A knock on the door made her jump. 3 sharp raps, then silence. She crossed the room and tried the handle even though she knew it would be locked. It wasn't. The door swung open and she found herself face to face with the woman from the cathedral, the one with silver hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. "Breakfast," the woman said. Not a greeting, not an introduction, just a statement. "I'm not hungry. You'll eat anyway." The woman's eyes were pale blue and empty of anything resembling warmth. "Mr. Devereux doesn't tolerate waste. Come." She turned and walked down the hallway without checking if Serena followed. Everything about her movements was precise, military, like she'd spent years learning how to exist without making mistakes. Serena hesitated, then stepped out of the room. The hallway stretched in both directions, lined with doors and paintings, and the kind of silence that came from thick walls and expensive construction. She could hear her own breathing, could hear the faint hum of the house settling around her. The woman was already 20 feet ahead, her heels clicking against hardwood floors that gleamed like dark water. Serena followed. They moved through the house in silence, down one hallway, through a sitting room with furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum, past windows that showed nothing but gray sky and rain and cliffs that dropped away into nothing. The estate was massive, a labyrinth of rooms and corridors that all looked the same until they didn't. Finally, they reached a dining room. Long table, 12 chairs, more windows overlooking the ocean, and sitting at the far end with a cup of coffee and a newspaper looking like he'd slept perfectly when Serena knew he probably hadn't, was Lucien. He glanced up when she entered. His eyes moved over her face, lingering for a moment too long, then returned to the newspaper like she wasn't worth more than that one look. "Sit." The silver-haired woman gestured to a chair. Serena sat. The chair was too big. The table was too long. Everything in this house was built for people who took up more space than they needed just because they could. A man in a white jacket, a cook, maybe, or a servant, appeared and set a plate in front of her, eggs, toast, fruit arranged like someone cared about presentation. Her stomach twisted. She hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon, but the thought of food made her want to vomit. The silver-haired woman took a position near the door, hands folded behind her back, eyes on nothing and everything at once. Lucien turned a page of his newspaper, Serena stared at her plate. The silence stretched. Seconds became a minute. The minute became 2. Rain drummed against the windows. Somewhere in the house, a clock ticked. "You're not eating." Lucien's voice cut through the quiet without him looking up. "I'm not hungry." That wasn't a question. Serena's jaw tightened. She picked up her fork and stabbed a piece of melon just to have something to do with her hands. Didn't eat it, just held it there while her pulse hammered in her throat. Lucien finally set down the newspaper and looked at her. Really looked at her. The gray in his eyes was calmer than last night, but no less intense. Like a storm that had moved offshore, but might come back any second. "We need to talk," he said. "So talk." His mouth almost twitched, almost smiled. It was gone before it formed. "Your mother. I need you to call her, ask about her family, specifically about anyone named Elena. She won't know anything." "How do you know?" "Because she never talks about her family, ever. I asked once when I was 12 and she locked herself in her room for 2 days. Serena set down the fork. Whatever happened before I was born, she buried it deep. Lucien studied her for a long moment. Then we dig it up. How? Records, birth certificates, marriage licenses, immigration documents if her family came from France. He leaned back in his chair, fingers drumming against the armrest. Everyone leaves a trail, even people who don't want to be found. And what if you find out I'm nobody? Just some girl who happens to look like your dead fiancé's ghost? Elena wasn't my fiancé. His voice went cold. She was my father's. And she's not dead. She disappeared. There's a difference. Serena wrapped her arms around herself. Not to me. No. He stood up, the chair scraping against the floor. But it matters to me, which means it matters to you. Because until I know who you are and why you're here, you don't leave this house. I'm a prisoner. You're protected. He moved toward the windows, hands in his pockets, shoulders tight beneath his shirt. There are people in this city who would kill you just to hurt me. People who would use you as leverage. People who don't care about collateral damage as long as they get what they want. And what do you want? He turned. The light from the window turned him into a silhouette, dark and sharp and impossible to read. The truth, he said quietly. That's all I've ever wanted. Something in his voice made Serena's chest ache. Not pity, she didn't have room for that, but recognition, maybe. She knew what it felt like to want something so badly it hollowed you out from the inside. What if the truth doesn't help? She asked. What if it just makes everything worse? Lucien's jaw tightened. Then at least I'll know. He walked past her toward the door, then paused and looked at the silver-haired woman. Margot, show her the library. Let her have access to the main floor, but she doesn't leave the property. Clear? Yes, sir. Then he was gone. Margot, so that was her name, waited until his footsteps faded down the hallway before speaking. Come. Where are we going? He said the library, so we're going to the library. Her accent made every word sound like a reprimand. Move. Serena stood and followed her back through the maze of hallways. They passed more rooms, a study with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a sitting room with a fireplace big enough to stand in, a gallery lined with paintings that probably had names and histories Serena would never know. Finally, Margot stopped in front of a set of double doors and pushed them open. The library took Serena's breath away. It was 2 stories tall, walls lined with books from floor to ceiling, a spiral staircase in the corner leading to a second-level balcony, leather chairs positioned near windows that overlooked the cliffs, a desk in the center of the room, massive and old, covered in papers and files, and the kind of organized chaos that came from someone who worked late into the night. Mr. Devereux uses this room for business, Margot said. You may read, you may look, but you touch nothing on the desk. Understood? Serena nodded. Margot studied her for a moment, those pale blue eyes searching for something. Then she turned and left without another word. The doors closed behind her with a soft click. Serena stood alone in the library and felt her pulse quicken. The desk, papers, files, the kind of organized chaos that came from someone obsessed with finding answers. She crossed the room slowly, like the floor might give way if she moved too fast. Rain pattered against the windows. The house creaked. Somewhere far away, a door slammed. The desk was covered in documents, some in folders, some loose. some with handwritten notes in the margins in a script so sharp it looked angry. She recognized Lucien's handwriting from the signature on papers Marcus had shown her, the same harsh slant, the same way he pressed too hard with the pen like he was trying to carve the words into the page. She shouldn't look. She knew she shouldn't, but her hands were already reaching. The first folder was labeled with a name she didn't recognize, Giovanni Russo. Inside were photos, surveillance shots of a man in his 50s, balding, heavy, the kind of face that had seen too much and enjoyed most of it. Notes in the margins. Confirmed involvement. Warehouse District. October 2011, the year Lucien's father died. Serena's stomach clenched. She set the folder down and reached for another. This one was thicker, older. The edges worn from being opened too many times. The label said simply, Elena. Her hand shook as she opened it. The first thing she saw was a photograph. A woman, early 20s, dark hair falling past her shoulders, brown eyes that looked almost gold in the light, high cheekbones, full mouth, a face that could have been Serena's if you blurred the edges and looked at it from the right angle. Elena Moreau. Serena's breath caught. She looked like her. Not exactly, not enough that someone would mistake them for the same person, but enough that standing side by side they could have been sisters, cousins, family. She flipped through more photos. Elena laughing, Elena in a summer dress, Elena standing next to a man who had to be Lucien's father, tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair streaked with gray, the same sharp jaw Lucien had inherited. There were documents underneath. Birth certificate. Elena Marie Moreau, born in Lyon, France, 1986. Immigration records showing she'd come to the States when she was 19. A university ID from a college downtown. An engagement announcement from a newspaper dated 2 weeks before the murder. And then, at the very bottom of the folder, a handwritten note. The handwriting was different, older, shaky, like whoever wrote it had been scared or hurt or both. I'm sorry. I can't stay. If they find me, they'll kill me too. Tell Luke I loved him. Tell him I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough. It wasn't signed. Serena read it 3 times. Each time the words felt heavier. Elena had run because she was afraid, because whoever killed Lucien's father might come after her next. She'd abandoned everything, her fiancé, her life, her future, because staying meant dying, and Lucien had spent 15 years thinking she was part of the conspiracy. Serena closed the folder with trembling hands and set it back on the desk exactly where she'd found it. Her chest felt tight, her eyes burned. She didn't know this woman, didn't know Lucien's father, didn't know anything about the murder or the people involved or why it mattered so much. But she knew what it felt like to run because staying wasn't safe. She knew what it felt like to be afraid. The door opened behind her. Serena spun around, heart slamming into her throat. Lucien stood in the doorway. His eyes moved from her face to the desk, to the folder she'd just put down. His expression didn't change, but something in the air shifted, got colder, sharper. Find anything interesting? His voice was quiet. Serena's mouth went dry. I was just looking through my files. He stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. Margot told you not to touch anything on the desk. She did. And you touched it anyway. Yes. He moved closer, slow, deliberate. Each step measured like he was giving her time to explain, time to apologize, time to make it worse. Serena lifted her chin. You want to know who I am. I want to know why it matters. That folder has answers. That folder is private. Nothing in this house is private if I'm trapped here. Her voice came out sharper than she meant it to, anger bleeding through the fear. You don't get to lock me up and expect me to just sit quietly while you dig through my life. If you're going to dissect my family, I get to dissect yours. Lucien stopped, 3 feet away, close enough that she could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hands curled into fists at his sides, the storm building behind those gray eyes. You have no idea what you're talking about, he said quietly. Then explain it to me. I don't owe you explanations. You owe me everything. The words exploded out of her. You dragged me into this. You married me to pay off my brother's debt, and then you looked at my face and decided I was part of some 15-year-old nightmare. I didn't ask for any of this, so yes, you owe me an explanation. You owe me the truth. Silence. Rain hammered the windows. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed the hour. Lucien stared at her. His chest rose and fell too fast. His jaw worked like he was chewing words he didn't want to say. Finally, he turned away and moved to the window, pressed one hand against the glass, looked out at the ocean below. "My father built this empire from nothing," he said. His voice was low, rough. "He came to this country with $200 and a willingness to do things other men wouldn't do. He made connections, built loyalty, turned fear into power. By the time I was 10, he owned half the city." He paused. His hand on the glass curled into a fist. He met Elena when she was working at a cafe downtown. She was beautiful, smart, didn't care about his money or his reputation. She saw him as a man, not a monster. They fell in love. He proposed. She said yes. For the first time in my life, I saw him happy. Serena watched the tension roll through his shoulders, watched the way he pressed his forehead against the glass like the cold might help. 2 weeks before the wedding, someone called him about a deal. A big one. Enough money to set up the next generation. He went to meet them at a warehouse by the docks. I was supposed to go with him, but Elena asked me to help her pick out flowers for the ceremony. So I stayed. His voice cracked, just slightly, just enough to hear the wound underneath. 3 hours later, I got a call saying he was dead. 3 bullets to the chest. No witnesses. No suspects. And Elena was gone. He turned to face Serena. His eyes were raw. She left a note saying she couldn't stay, that she was sorry, that she loved him. And then she vanished like she'd never existed. Every lead I followed went nowhere. Every person who might have known something ended up dead or disappeared. For 15 years, I've been trying to figure out if she ran because she was scared or because she was guilty. The note said she was afraid, Serena said quietly. The note could have been a lie. Or it could have been the truth. Lucien's jaw tightened. If it was the truth, why didn't she come back? Why didn't she contact me? Why did she disappear so completely that not even my people could find her? Because maybe staying hidden was the only way to stay alive. He looked at her for a long moment. Something flickered across his face, doubt maybe, or hope that he didn't want to feel. And now you show up, he said quietly, with her face, her bloodline, her name. You show up married to me because of a debt I could have collected 100 different ways. But I chose this. I chose to bring you into my house instead of killing your brother and moving on. And I don't know if that's coincidence or fate or something worse. Serena's heart hammered against her ribs. You think I'm part of some plan, some conspiracy? I don't know what to think. I'm nobody. The words came out desperate. I'm just a girl who grew up poor and worked 2 jobs and tried to keep her family together. I don't know anything about Elena or your father or what happened 15 years ago. I didn't even know my mother's maiden name mattered until you asked. Then why do you look like her? I don't know. The shout echoed through the library. Serena's hands were shaking. Her eyes burned. She felt like she was being pulled apart from the inside. Lucien stared at her. His chest heaved. The gray in his eyes was chaos. Then he closed the distance between them in 2 strides and grabbed her face with both hands. Not gently, not rough. Somewhere in between. His fingers pressed against her jaw. His thumbs traced her cheekbones. He stared at her like he was trying to memorize every detail, trying to find the differences between her face and the ghost that haunted him. I need you to be nobody, he said. His voice was barely a whisper. I need you to be exactly what you say you are. Because if you're not, if you're connected to the people who killed him, I don't know what I'll do. Serena's breath caught. His face was inches from hers. She could see the exhaustion carved into the lines around his eyes, could see the way his pupils were blown wide, could feel the heat coming off him in waves. I am nobody, she whispered. His jaw clenched. His hands tightened on her face. For 3 seconds she thought he might kiss her or kill her, and she didn't know which terrified her more. Then he let go and stepped back like she'd burned him. Get out of the library, he said. Lucien, get out. His voice was ice. Serena backed toward the door. Her legs felt like water. Her chest ached. She grabbed the handle and pulled the door open and stumbled out into the hallway. Behind her, she heard glass shatter. She didn't go back to check. The rest of the day passed in a haze. Serena wandered the main floor of the house like a ghost. Margot appeared occasionally to check on her but didn't speak, didn't offer explanations or comfort, just watched with those pale empty eyes and then disappeared again. Serena found herself in the gallery, standing in front of a painting of a storm over the ocean. All dark clouds and white-capped waves and the kind of violence that never ended. She thought about Elena Moreau, about a woman who loved a dangerous man and lost him, about running because staying meant dying, about leaving a note that said I'm sorry and spending the rest of her life hiding from the consequences. Serena pressed her hand against her chest and felt her heart beating too fast. She wasn't Elena, but she was starting to understand her. Footsteps behind her, heavy, deliberate. She turned and found Lucien standing in the doorway of the gallery. He'd changed clothes, dark jeans, black shirt. His hair was still damp like he'd just showered. There was a fresh cut on his right hand, probably from the glass he'd broken. "We're going into the city," he said. "Why?" "Because I need answers, and sitting in this house isn't getting them." He gestured toward the door. "Come on." "You said I couldn't leave." "You can't. Not alone." His eyes were hard. "With me is different." Serena didn't move. "Where are we going?" "To see your mother." Her stomach dropped. "No. It wasn't a request." "I said no." She stepped back. "You're not dragging her into this. She doesn't know anything. Questioning her won't help." "Then she has nothing to worry about." "She has everything to worry about." Serena's voice rose. "You're a crime lord showing up at her door demanding answers about things that happened before I was born. That terrifies her. That ruins her." Lucien moved into the gallery. Slow, predatory. "Your mother is connected to Elena Moreau by blood, which means she knows more than she's told you. Maybe she doesn't realize it matters. Maybe she's been hiding it on purpose. Either way, I need to talk to her. And if she doesn't have answers, then I keep looking." He stopped a few feet away. "But I'm done waiting, Serena. Every day you're in my house is another day someone might figure out who you are and use you against me. I need to know the truth. Now." Serena's hands curled into fists. "And what happens to her after you get your answers? You just let her go? You leave her alone?" "If she's innocent, yes." "And if you decide she's not?" Lucien's jaw tightened. "Then we'll deal with that when it happens." It wasn't an answer. It was a threat. Serena felt something inside her crack. Not break. Not yet. But fracture just enough to let the rage seep through. "Fine," she said quietly. "We'll go see my mother. But if you hurt her, if you so much as make her cry, I will find a way to make you regret it." Lucien's eyes narrowed. Then something that might have been respect flickered across his face. Noted. 20 minutes later, they were back in the black SUV with tinted windows. This time, Lucien sat across from her instead of beside her. His phone was out. He was typing something rapid-fire, jaw tight, eyes focused on the screen. Serena stared out the window and watched the city come into view. Buildings rising like broken teeth against the gray sky. Rain streaking the glass. People moving through their lives with no idea that everything could shatter in 3 seconds if the wrong person made the wrong choice. She thought about her mother, about how small she'd looked at the cathedral, how her sobs had echoed even after she'd been ushered out, how she'd probably spent the last 18 hours crying and praying and wondering if her daughter was still alive. Serena's chest ached. The SUV pulled up outside a narrow apartment building in a part of the city where the paint was always peeling and the sirens never stopped. Serena's childhood home. 4th floor, 2 bedrooms, a bathroom where the toilet ran and the sink dripped and you had to jiggle the handle just right to get hot water. Lucien glanced at the building and something unreadable crossed his face. Then he opened the door and stepped out. Serena followed. 2 of his men flanked them as they entered the building. The lobby smelled like mildew and old cigarettes. The elevator was broken. It had been broken for 6 years, so they took the stairs. 4 flights. Serena's legs burned by the time they reached the top. She stopped in front of apartment 4C and stared at the faded number on the door. Home. It didn't feel like home anymore. She knocked. Footsteps inside. A chain sliding. The door cracked open and her mother's face appeared in the gap. Red eyes, tear-streaked cheeks, hair pulled back in a messy bun. "Serena." Her voice broke on the name. "Hi, Mom." The door flew open. Her mother reached for her, pulling her into a hug so tight it hurt. She smelled like lavender and flower, and all the things Serena had grown up with. All the things that felt safe before the world turned sharp. I thought, oh God, I thought... Her mother couldn't finish the sentence, just held on like letting go meant losing her forever. Lucien cleared his throat. Her mother's head snapped up. She saw him standing there and her face went pale. She stepped back, pulling Serena with her, putting herself between her daughter and the man who dragged their family into hell. Mrs. Vale. Lucien's voice was calm, professional, the tone of someone used to scaring people without trying. I need to talk to you. Get out of my house. I'm not in your house. I'm in your hallway. He gestured toward the open door. But I will come in if you don't invite me. Your choice. Her mother's hands shook. She looked at Serena, eyes pleading for an explanation. Serena stepped forward. Mom, please, just let him ask his questions. If you answer, he'll leave. And if I don't? Lucien's expression didn't change, but the air got colder. Let's not find out. Her mother stared at him for a long moment. Then she stepped aside and let them in. The apartment was exactly how Serena remembered it. Small, cramped, furniture that had been old when they bought it secondhand, a kitchen table with one leg shorter than the others, photos on the walls of better times that felt like they'd happened to different people. Lucien's men stayed in the hallway. He entered alone and closed the door behind him. Serena's mother wrapped her arms around herself. What do you want? Information. Lucien moved into the center of the living room. His presence filled the space, made everything feel smaller. About your family, specifically about a woman named Elena Moreau. Her mother's face went white. Serena's heart stopped. I don't... Her mother's voice shook. I don't know that name. You're lying. I'm not... Your maiden name is Moreau. Lucien's voice was quiet, dangerous. Elena Moreau came to this country from Lyon, France in 2005. You were born in Lyon in 1970. That's not a coincidence. Her mother looked at Serena. Her eyes were wild, desperate. Serena stepped forward. Mom, please, just tell him. There's nothing to tell. Bullshit. The word came from Lucien. Sharp, final. Elena Moreau was engaged to my father 15 years ago. She disappeared the night he was murdered. And your daughter has her face. So I'll ask you one more time. How are you connected? Silence. Rain battered the windows. Somewhere in the building, a baby cried. Serena's mother sank into a chair. Her hands covered her face. Her shoulders shook. She was my cousin, she whispered. The words hit like a gunshot. Serena felt the floor tilt beneath her. Lucien went very still. Say that again. Elena was my cousin. Her mother's voice was muffled behind her hands. Her mother and my mother were sisters. We grew up together in Lyon. She was like my sister, closer than family. We did everything together. And you never mentioned this. Serena's voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. You never told me I had a cousin. She's dead. Her mother looked up. Tears streamed down her face. She died a long time ago, before you were born. There was no reason to tell you. She's not dead, Lucien said. His voice was ice. She ran. She might as well be dead. Her mother's voice cracked. After what happened to your father, she called me once, said she was leaving the country, said people were after her, said if I ever loved her, I'd forget she existed. And then she hung up, and I never heard from her again. Serena's legs gave out. She sank onto the couch, hands shaking, chest tight. Her mother was Elena's cousin, which meant Elena's blood ran through Serena's veins, which meant the resemblance wasn't coincidence. It was family. Lucien's face was carved from stone. Where did she go? I don't know. Don't lie to me. I'm not lying. Her mother's voice rose. She didn't tell me. She said it was safer if I didn't know. All she said was that she was leaving and she wasn't coming back and I needed to protect myself and my family. So I did. I buried everything about her, changed my name when I got married, never spoke French again. Never talked about Lyon or my family or anything that could connect us. I erased her because she asked me to. Serena stared at her mother, at this woman she'd known her entire life, at this stranger. You lied to me, she whispered. I protected you. You erased an entire part of our family and never told me why. Because knowing would have put you in danger, her mother's voice broke. Elena was involved with dangerous people. Your father... She looked at Lucien. No offense, but your father was a criminal, a powerful one. And when he died, everyone connected to him became a target. Elena knew that. She ran to save herself. I buried her memory to save you. The room spun. Serena pressed her hands against her face and tried to breathe. All these years, all the questions about her mother's family that got shut down, all the times she'd asked about grandparents or cousins or anyone beyond their tiny broken circle and got silence in return. It was all because of Elena. Because of a woman who loved the wrong man and ran when he died. Because of blood that tied them together across years and oceans and choices neither of them made. Lucien moved to the window, stared out at the rain. His jaw worked, his hands curled into fists. When he finally spoke, his voice was so quiet Serena almost didn't hear it. She's alive. I don't know that, her mother said. But you don't know she's dead either. Her mother didn't answer. Lucien turned. His eyes found Serena's. The gray in them was burning. Your mother's right about one thing, he said quietly. Elena's blood runs through you, which means you're connected to everything that happened 15 years ago, whether you knew it or not. And that makes you dangerous. To who? Serena's voice shook. To me. To yourself. To everyone. He moved toward the door. We're leaving. Wait. Her mother stood. Serena stays here. With me. Where she's safe. Lucien looked at her, and for the first time since they'd entered the apartment, something almost human crossed his face. Something that might have been pity. Nowhere is safe anymore, he said. Not for her. Not as long as people know who she looks like. Then he opened the door and walked out. Serena stood on shaking legs. Her mother grabbed her arm. Don't go with him. I don't have a choice. You always have a choice. Serena looked at her mother, at the fear in her eyes, at the way her hands trembled, at everything she'd sacrificed to keep her daughter out of a world that had swallowed her cousin whole. No, Serena said quietly. I really don't. She pulled free and walked out of the apartment. Behind her, her mother's sobs followed her down the hallway. Odds. The ride back to the estate was silent. Lucien stared at his phone. Serena stared at nothing. Her mind was spinning. Elena was family. Real, actual family. Not some stranger whose face she'd borrowed by accident. Blood. History. A connection that went deeper than coincidence. And Elena had loved Lucien's father. Had been engaged to marry into the same empire Serena was now trapped in, had run because staying meant dying. The pattern was too clear, too familiar, too terrifying. By the time they reached the estate, night had fallen. The house loomed against the dark sky, lit from within, looking less like a home and more like a prison pretending to be a palace. Lucien got out of the SUV and walked toward the entrance without checking if she followed. Serena climbed out and stood in the rain for a moment. Let it soak through her hair. Let it wash away the feeling of her mother's apartment and the weight of secrets that should have stayed buried. Then she followed him inside. He was already halfway up the stairs when she entered. She watched him disappear down the second-floor hallway without a word. Margot appeared from somewhere, silent as a ghost. Your room, she said. I know where my room is. Margot's pale eyes studied her. You look like you've seen something that frightened you. I look like someone who just found out her entire life was built on lies. Something that might have been sympathy flickered across Margot's face. Then it was gone. Welcome to the family, she said. And Serena realized with cold clarity that she was right. She wasn't just a prisoner anymore. She was part of this. Part of the Devereux empire. Part of a 15-year-old tragedy that had shaped everything Lucien was and everything he'd become. She was Elena's blood. And that meant she was connected to the murder that had destroyed him, whether she wanted to be or not. Serena didn't sleep that night either. She lay in the too-big bed in the too-quiet room and stared at the ceiling while her mind tore itself apart, trying to make sense of everything. Elena was family. Her mother had lied for 23 years. Lucien thought she was dangerous just for existing, and somewhere out there, buried in decades of silence and fear, was a truth that might get her killed. She got out of bed around 3 in the morning when the stillness became unbearable, pulled on the same jeans and sweater from earlier. Her hands were steadier now. The shock had worn off and left something harder in its place, something that felt like anger. Her mother had spent Serena's entire life protecting her from a past she didn't know existed, had erased Elena, had buried the Moreau name so deep that even speaking French became dangerous, had built walls around their family so high that Serena never knew there was anything beyond them worth seeing, and now those walls were gone. Now Serena was standing in the ruins trying to figure out who she was supposed to be. She left her room. The hallway was dark except for a few dim lights along the baseboards. The house was quiet but not empty. She could feel the weight of people moving through it, guards on patrol, servants working overnight shifts, the machinery of Lucien's empire that never stopped turning even when everyone else was asleep. She walked without knowing where she was going, just moved through hallways and downstairs and past rooms she hadn't seen before. A sitting room with windows overlooking the cliffs, a study with leather chairs and a desk covered in papers, a gallery with paintings that probably cost more than her mother's entire apartment building. And then she heard it. Piano. The sound came from somewhere deeper in the house. Soft at first, just a few notes floating through the silence like ghosts. Then more. A melody that sounded sad and beautiful and broken all at once. Serena followed the music. She moved down another hallway, through a sitting area, past more doors and more windows showing nothing but darkness and rain. The music got louder, closer, until she was standing outside a room with double doors cracked open just enough to see inside. Lucien sat at a grand piano in what looked like a music room. His back was to her. His fingers moved across the keys with the kind of precision that came from years of practice. He wasn't reading sheet music, just playing from memory. The melody was haunting, the kind of thing that made your chest ache without knowing why. Serena pushed the door open wider. The hinges creaked. Lucien's hands froze on the keys. The music stopped mid-phrase, leaving the air feeling empty and wrong. He didn't turn around, just sat there with his shoulders rigid and his head slightly bowed like he was waiting for her to speak first. "I couldn't sleep," Serena said. "Neither could I." His voice was rough, tired, more human than she'd heard it before. She stepped into the room. The floor was polished wood. The walls were lined with more bookshelves and a few paintings of landscapes that looked European, old world, the kind of places people went to forget who they were. "What were you playing?" she asked. "Nothing." He still hadn't turned around. "Just something my father used to play when he couldn't sleep." Serena moved closer, stopped a few feet behind him. "Did he teach you?" "No." Lucien's fingers traced the keys without pressing down. "I taught myself after he died. Spent hours listening to recordings of him playing, learned every piece he knew. Thought maybe if I could play them the same way, I'd understand him better." "Did it work?" "No." He finally turned on the bench to face her. His eyes were shadowed, exhausted. The gray in them looked almost black in the dim light. "All it did was make me realize how little I actually knew him." Serena wrapped her arms around herself. The room was cold. Or maybe she was. "I know what that feels like." "Do you?" "My mother spent my entire life hiding who she was, who we were. I thought I knew her. Turns out I didn't know anything." Lucien studied her for a long moment. Then he gestured to the space beside him on the bench. "Sit." It wasn't a command, not quite. More like an invitation from someone who was too tired to pretend he didn't want company. Serena hesitated, then she crossed the room and sat down beside him. The bench was narrow. Their shoulders almost touched. She could feel the heat coming off him, could smell that same dark, expensive cologne mixed with something that might have been whiskey. "Play something," she said. "Why?" "Because I want to hear you play something that isn't sad." His mouth almost smiled. Almost. "I don't think I know anything that isn't sad." "Then play the saddest thing you know and get it over with." This time he did smile. Just barely. Just enough to crack the mask for half a second. Then he turned back to the keys and started playing. The melody was slower than before. Quieter. Each note hung in the air like it was afraid to let go of the one before it. Serena closed her eyes and let the music wash over her. It was sad. Unbearably sad. The kind of sad that came from losing something you'd never get back no matter how hard you tried. When he finished, the silence felt heavier than before. "That was beautiful," Serena said quietly. "That was grief." Lucien's hands dropped to his lap. "Every note of it." "Is that what you feel? All the time?" He didn't answer right away, just stared at the keys like they might tell him something he didn't want to know. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "For 15 years, I've felt like I'm missing a piece of myself. Like someone reached inside my chest and pulled out something vital, and I've been walking around half empty ever since." He paused. "And then you showed up and I saw Elena's face staring back at me, and for a second I thought maybe I'd finally found what I lost." Serena's breath caught. "And now? Now I don't know what to think." He turned to look at her. The gray in his eyes was burning. "You're not her. You're not even connected to her in any way that matters. You're just a girl who got dragged into my nightmare because her brother made a stupid mistake. But you have her blood, her face, her name hidden in your mother's past. And I can't decide if that makes you the answer I've been looking for, or just another question I'll never solve." The words hit like stones. Serena felt something inside her chest crack open. Not break. Not yet. But split just enough to let the truth pour out. "I'm not the answer," she said. Her voice shook. "I'm just someone who's as lost as you are." Lucien stared at her. His jaw tightened. His hands curled into fists on his thighs. For 3 seconds she thought he might say something, might reach for her, might do anything except sit there looking like he was drowning in his own head. Then footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Fast, urgent. The door flew open and the man with the scar, the one who'd been at the cathedral, burst into the room. His face was pale. His eyes were wild. "Boss, we have a problem." Lucien was on his feet in half a second. "What kind of problem?" "The Russo family just hit one of our warehouses on the east side, burned it to the ground. 3 of our men are dead. 2 more are missing." The air in the room turned to ice. Serena watched Lucien's entire body go rigid, watched the gray in his eyes turn to stone, watched the mask slam down so hard it looked painful. "When?" His voice was deadly quiet. 20 minutes ago, I just got the call." Lucien moved toward the door, stopped, looked back at Serena. "Stay in this room. Don't leave. Don't open the door for anyone except Margot. Understood?" "What's happening?" "War." He said it like it was a fact, like it was already decided and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. "The Russos have been testing me for months. Now they're making a move, which means I need to respond before they think I'm weak." He disappeared into the hallway with the scarred man. Their footsteps faded fast. Serena sat alone in the music room with her heart hammering against her ribs and the taste of fear sharp on her tongue. War. She didn't know what that meant in Lucien's world. Didn't know if it was a metaphor or a promise or something worse. But she knew enough to understand that when men like him talked about war, people died. She stood up, moved to the door, pressed her ear against it, and listened. Voices echoed from somewhere deeper in the house, angry, urgent, doors slamming, cars starting outside, the sound of an empire mobilizing for violence. Serena backed away from the door. Her hands were shaking again. She thought about Elena, about how she'd run when the world got too dangerous, about how she'd disappeared rather than stay and fight, about how she'd spent the rest of her life hiding because hiding was the only way to survive. Serena understood now why her mother had erased Elena from their history. Because women like them didn't survive in worlds like this. They either ran or they died. And Serena was starting to realize she might not have time to do either. Hours passed. Serena stayed in the music room even though Lucien had said to stay in her bedroom. She couldn't make herself leave, couldn't make herself walk back through those dark hallways alone. So she curled up in one of the leather chairs near the window and watched the rain and waited for something to happen. Dawn came gray and cold. The storm hadn't let up. If anything, it had gotten worse. Wind rattled the windows. Rain hammered the glass hard enough to crack it. The ocean below the cliffs was violent, white foam and black water churning like it wanted to swallow the world. Footsteps in the hallway. Serena's head snapped up. The door opened and Margot stepped in. Her silver hair was perfect as always. Her pale eyes swept the room and landed on Serena without surprise. "You were told to stay in your room," she said. "I didn't want to be alone." Something flickered across Margot's face. Not quite sympathy, but close. Come, I'll take you to breakfast. Where's Lucien? Handling business. What kind of business? Margot's expression didn't change. The kind that doesn't concern you. She turned and walked out. Serena followed because sitting alone in the music room wasn't helping, and at least movement felt like doing something. They went to the dining room, the same long table, the same two big chairs, but this time there was food already laid out: eggs, toast, fruit, coffee that smelled strong enough to wake the dead. Serena sat and poured herself a cup. Didn't eat, just wrapped her hands around the warm ceramic and tried to stop shaking. Margot stood near the door, silent, watching. How long have you worked for him? Serena asked. 15 years? Since his father died. Margot's eyes narrowed. Yes. Were you there when it happened? No. The word was clipped, final, the kind of answer that said the conversation was over. But Serena couldn't stop, couldn't let it go. Do you know what happened? Really happened? Margot was quiet for a long moment. Then she moved to the table and sat down across from Serena. It was the first time she'd ever sat in Serena's presence, the first time she'd treated her like something other than a prisoner to be managed. What do you know about loyalty? Margot asked. The question caught Serena off guard. What? Loyalty. Margot's pale eyes were sharp. Do you understand what it means? I guess, being there for people, not betraying them. No. Margot leaned forward. Loyalty is choosing someone over yourself, over your safety, over your future. It's deciding that their survival matters more than your own. And in this world, loyalty is the only thing that keeps you alive. Serena's throat tightened. Why are you telling me this? Because you're going to have to choose soon. Margot's voice was quiet, dangerous. Lucien is at war. The Russo family has been waiting for an opportunity to take him down for years. Now they think they have it. They're going to come for him, for this house, for everyone in it. And when they do, you'll have to decide if you're loyal to him or if you're just another person waiting for a chance to run. I'm not. Serena's words tangled. I didn't ask for any of this. None of us did. Margot stood up. But we're here anyway. So the question is, what are you going to do about it? She left before Serena could answer. Serena sat alone in the dining room with cold coffee and a question she didn't know how to answer: loyalty. She didn't know Lucien anything. He dragged her into this, married her to pay off a debt, kept her prisoner in a fortress, used her as a puzzle piece in a 15-year-old mystery that had nothing to do with her. But he'd also protected her, kept her family safe, given her answers even when they hurt, looked at her like she mattered even when he was terrified of what she might mean. And somewhere in the last 48 hours, she'd stopped thinking of him as her captor and started thinking of him as something else, something dangerous, something that felt too close to understanding. The door to the dining room opened again. Serena looked up expecting Margot. It was Lucien. He looked like he'd been through hell. His shirt was untucked. His hair was a mess. There was blood on his hands, not a lot, but enough to be visible, and his eyes were wild with something that looked like rage barely held in check. We need to talk, he said. Serena stood up. What happened? Not here. He turned and walked out. She followed him through the house, down hallways she hadn't seen before, through a door that led to a staircase going down, into the basement. The air got colder as they descended, damper. The walls were stone. The lighting was harsh fluorescent that made everything look sick. Lucien stopped in front of a heavy metal door and pulled out a key, unlocked it, pushed it open. Inside was a room that looked like it belonged in a different century. Stone walls, a single table in the center, chains hanging from the ceiling, and sitting in a chair with his hands zip-tied behind his back and blood dripping from his nose was a man Serena didn't recognize. Her stomach lurched. What is this? She whispered. This, Lucien said quietly, is one of the Russo family's lieutenants. We pulled him out of the wreckage at the warehouse. He's been very helpful. The man in the chair spat blood. Go to hell. Lucien ignored him. He looked at Serena. He told me something interesting, something I need you to hear. Lucien, I don't want to be here. I don't care. His voice was ice. You wanted answers about Elena, about what happened to my father, about why any of this matters. Well, here's your answer. He moved to the table and picked up a folder, flipped it open, pulled out a photo, and held it up. It was a surveillance shot, grainy, old, taken from a distance, but clear enough to see two people standing outside a warehouse. One was a man Serena didn't recognize. The other, her breath stopped. The other was her mother. That photo was taken 2 weeks before my father was murdered, Lucien said. His voice was shaking. That's your mother, Serena, meeting with Giovanni Russo, the man who ordered the hit. The room spun. Serena grabbed the edge of the table to keep from falling. Her vision blurred. Her ears rang. She couldn't breathe. No, she whispered. No, that can't be. It's real. Lucien's voice was hard, merciless. I've had this photo for 3 years. I just didn't know who the woman in it was until tonight, but now I do. Because you showed up with Elena's face and your mother's lies, and I finally have a name to match the person who helped kill my father. Serena looked at the photo again, tried to find something that proved it wasn't real, wasn't her mother, wasn't possible. But it was her, younger, thinner, hair darker, but unmistakably her mother standing outside a warehouse talking to a man who would orchestrate a murder 2 weeks later. She didn't. Serena's voice broke. She couldn't have. She did. Lucien threw the photo on the table. Your mother was the connection. She introduced Elena to my father, set up their meeting, played matchmaker. And then when Giovanni Russo wanted inside information about my father's operations, she gave it to him. Dates, locations, security details. Everything he needed to plan the perfect ambush. You're lying. I'm not. You have to be lying. Serena's voice rose. My mother wouldn't. She's not a criminal. She's not a killer. She's just my mom. Your mom, Lucien said quietly, is the reason my father is dead. The words hit like bullets. Serena felt something inside her shatter. Not crack, not fracture, shatter completely, into pieces so small she'd never put them back together. Her mother, who baked bread at 5 in the morning, who worked 2 jobs to keep them fed, who cried when Serena brought home good grades, who held her when she was scared, who sacrificed everything to keep them safe. That mother, that woman, had helped murder Lucien's father. No. Serena backed toward the door. No, I don't believe you. I don't. You're trying to manipulate me. You're trying to make me. I'm trying to give you the truth. Lucien moved toward her. His eyes were burning. For 15 years, I've been hunting the people responsible. I found most of them, killed them, buried them where no one would ever find the bodies. But there was always one person I couldn't identify. One woman in the photos who didn't have a name. And now I know who she is. He stopped 3 feet away. She's your mother. Serena's legs gave out. She sank to the floor. Her chest heaved. Her hands shook so badly she had to press them against the stone to keep them still. This couldn't be real. This had to be a nightmare. This had to be some kind of mistake or lie. Or why? The word came out broken. Why would she do that? Money. The answer came from the man in the chair. He was smiling, blood on his teeth. Giovanni paid her $50,000. She was drowning in debt. Her husband was a gambling addict. She had a kid to feed. So she made a deal. Serena looked at him, at this stranger who knew more about her mother than she did. You're lying, she whispered. I'm not. He leaned forward as much as the zip ties would let him. Your mother set up the whole thing, convinced Elena to date Devereux's father, fed us information for months, and when we finally pulled the trigger, she got her money and disappeared into her sad little life like nothing happened. Shut up. Lucien's voice cut through the room like a blade. The man laughed. Truth hurts, doesn't it? Lucien crossed the distance in 2 strides and hit him. Hard. The sound of knuckles connecting with bone echoed off the stone walls. The man's head snapped back. Blood sprayed. He slumped in the chair. Lucien stood over him, breathing hard. His knuckles were split. Blood dripped onto the floor. Then he turned to Serena. She was still on the floor, still shaking, still trying to make sense of a world that had just inverted itself. I'm sorry, Lucien said quietly, and she realized with cold horror that he meant it. He looked at her like she was something broken, something he'd destroyed without meaning to, something that couldn't be fixed. I didn't want this to be true, he said. I wanted you to be nobody, just some girl caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. But you're not. You're the daughter of the woman who killed my father, which means... He stopped, didn't finish the sentence, didn't have to. Serena understood. She was leverage, a tool, a weapon he could use against her mother, against the Russos, against everyone who'd wronged him. She wasn't a person anymore. She was revenge. What are you going to do to her? Serena's voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. To my mother? Lucien's jaw tightened. I don't know yet. Are you going to kill her? He didn't answer. Serena forced herself to stand. Her legs shook, her chest ached, but she stood anyway because staying on the floor felt like giving up, and she didn't have room for that yet. If you hurt her, she said quietly, I will never forgive you. I don't need your forgiveness. Then what do you need? The question hung in the air between them, heavy, dangerous. Lucien stared at her. His eyes were wild. His jaw was tight. His hands were still curling into fists like he wanted to hit something else but couldn't find a target. I need, he said slowly, to know that you're not lying to me, that you didn't know, that you're not part of this. I'm not. Prove it. How? Help me find Elena. His voice dropped. Your mother knows where she went. She has to. They were cousins. They were close. Elena wouldn't have disappeared without telling her something, so you're going to ask your mother where Elena is, and you're going to get me an answer. Serena's stomach twisted. And if she doesn't know, then I'll assume she's lying, and I'll make her tell me the truth. It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. Serena felt tears burn behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of him, not when everything had already been stripped away and crying was the last piece of dignity she had left. Fine, she said. Her voice was steady, cold, empty. I'll help you find Elena, but not because I'm loyal to you, because I need to know if my mother is the person you say she is. And if she's not, if you're wrong, I'm going to make you regret every second of this. Lucien's expression didn't change. Deal. He walked past her toward the door, stopped, looked back. One more thing, he said quietly. The Russos know you're here. They know who your mother is, which means they're going to come for you. Use you to get to me. So from now on, you don't leave this house. You don't go anywhere without guards. You don't trust anyone except Margot and me. Understood? Serena nodded. She didn't have the energy to argue. Lucien left. The man in the chair laughed, a wet, broken sound. You're screwed, sweetheart, he said. Your mother sold you out before you were even born. Serena looked at him. At this man who'd helped murder Lucien's father, who'd burned a warehouse and killed 3 people just hours ago, who was sitting in a basement waiting to die and still found the energy to laugh. Shut up, she said, and then she walked out. She made it halfway up the stairs before she collapsed. Her legs gave out, her chest heaved. She pressed her hands against the cold stone wall and tried to breathe, but her lungs wouldn't work right. Her mother had helped kill Lucien's father. Her mother, the woman who'd raised her, who'd protected her, who'd lied to her for 23 years, had taken money to betray the man Elena loved, had set the whole thing in motion, had gotten people killed, and Serena was paying the price. She sank down onto the stairs and finally let herself cry. Not quiet tears, not the kind you could hide, the kind that tore through her chest and left her gasping, the kind that hurt, the kind that felt like dying. She didn't know how long she sat there. Could have been minutes, could have been hours. Eventually, footsteps echoed above her. She looked up through blurred vision and saw Margot standing at the top of the stairs. The older woman didn't say anything, just looked at her with those pale, empty eyes. Then she descended the stairs, slowly, each step deliberate. She stopped beside Serena and sat down. They sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Margot spoke. I told you that you'd have to choose, she said quietly. Loyalty or survival? Him or yourself? Now you know what that choice looks like. Serena wiped her face with shaking hands. What did you choose? Margot's expression didn't change. I chose him every time, even when it hurt, even when it cost me everything, because loyalty is the only thing in this world that means anything. My mother wasn't loyal. No. Margot's voice was soft. She wasn't, and now you're paying for her mistakes. Serena looked at her. What happens now? Now, Margot said, you decide who you want to be, the daughter of a traitor who runs when things get hard, or someone who stays and fights even when the world tells her she shouldn't. I don't know how to fight. Then you learn. Margot stood and extended her hand. Serena stared at it. Then she took it and let Margot pull her to her feet, because running wasn't an option anymore, because her mother's choices had trapped her here, because Lucien was right about one thing. She was connected to this now, whether she wanted to be or not. And the only way out was through. 3 days passed like walking through glass, every step careful, every breath measured, every moment waiting for something to shatter. Serena didn't see Lucien during those 3 days. He was gone before she woke and came back after she slept, if he slept at all. Margot said he was handling the Rousseau situation, said it with the kind of finality that meant people were dying and she shouldn't ask questions. So Serena didn't ask. Instead, she learned the fortress, memorized hallways, counted guards, studied the patterns of when doors were locked and when they weren't. She ate meals alone, read books she didn't care about, stood at windows and watched the ocean trying to tear itself apart against the cliffs below. And she thought about her mother, about $50,000, about desperation so deep you'd betray people who trusted you, about choices that seemed small at the time and ended up destroying everything. On the fourth morning, Margot came to her room before dawn. Get dressed, she said. Something you can move in. Serena sat up. Her body ached from another night without real sleep. Why? Because Mr. Devereux says you need to learn how to survive, and I'm going to teach you. 20 minutes later, Serena was standing in a room she hadn't seen before. Basement level, stone walls, padded floor, weapons mounted on racks, knives, guns, things she didn't have names for. It looked like a place where people came to learn how to hurt other people efficiently. Margot stood in the center of the room wearing black athletic clothes. Her silver hair was pulled back. Her pale eyes were sharp. Hit me, she said. Serena blinked. What? You heard me. Hit me. I'm not going to... Margot moved so fast Serena didn't see it coming. 1 second she was standing 6 feet away. The next she had Serena's arm twisted behind her back and her face pressed against the padded floor. The Rousseaus are coming for you, Margot said quietly. Her voice was calm, almost gentle, like she was explaining how to fold laundry instead of restraining someone. They know who you are. They know what you mean to Lucy. Yen, when they get here, and they will get here, they're going to use you to hurt him. And if you can't defend yourself, you're going to die badly. She let go. Serena scrambled back. Her shoulder screamed. Her face burned where it had hit the mat. I don't know how to fight, she said. Then learn. Margot settled back into a ready stance. Now hit me. Serena stood up. Her hands shook. She'd never hit anyone in her life, didn't know how, didn't know where to aim or how hard to swing, or... Margot sighed. You're thinking too much. Stop thinking. Just move. She came at Serena again. This time Serena tried to dodge, failed, ended up on her back with the air knocked out of her lungs. Again, Margot said. They did it again and again and again. For 2 hours, Serena got thrown, pinned, twisted, and slammed into the mat until her entire body was one giant bruise. She didn't land a single hit, didn't even come close. Margot moved like water, fluid and impossible to catch. Finally, Margot called a break. Serena lay on the mat, gasping. Sweat soaked through her clothes. Her muscles screamed. She tasted blood where she'd bitten her tongue. Margot crouched beside her and offered a water bottle. You're terrible at this. Thanks, Serena managed, but you kept getting up. That's more important. Margot's expression softened slightly. Most people quit after the first throw. You didn't. Didn't feel like I had a choice. You always have a choice. You chose to keep fighting. Remember that when things get worse. Serena pushed herself into a sitting position. Every muscle protested. How much worse can it get? Margot's pale eyes held hers. You have no idea. Eats. That night, Lucien finally appeared at dinner. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in 4 days. Dark circles under his eyes, stubble along his jaw. His shirt was wrinkled. His hands had fresh cuts on them. New ones, not from the man in the basement. He sat down at the head of the table without looking at her. Serena watched him pour coffee with hands that shook slightly, watched him stare at the cup like it might have answers, watched him look like someone who'd been living in hell and forgotten what anything else felt like. "How many?" she asked quietly. He looked up. "What? How many people have you killed in the last 4 days?" His jaw tightened. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer, then 12. The number hit like a fist to the stomach. 12 people. Dead. Because of a war that started 15 years ago and never ended. "Did it help?" Serena asked. "No." He set down the coffee without drinking it. "It never does." Silence stretched between them, heavy, exhausted. Finally, Lucien spoke again. "I need you to call your mother." Serena's stomach clenched. "Why?" "Because I'm done playing games. The Russos are escalating. They hit another warehouse last night, killed 6 more of my men. They're not going to stop until one of us is dead. And the only advantage I have is information they don't know I have." He looked at her. "Your mother knows where Elena is. I'm certain of it. And Elena knows things about my father's operation that could help me end this. Or my mother knows nothing and you're chasing ghosts. Then we find out." His voice was hard. "Tonight. You call her. You ask about Elena. You get me a location. Or I go to her apartment and get the answers myself." It wasn't a threat this time either. It was inevitability. Serena stood up, her chair scraped against the floor. "Fine, I'll call her, but I do it alone. No one listening, no one in the room, just me and her." Lucien studied her for a long moment, then he nodded. "You have 20 minutes. He pulled out a phone, not his, a burner, and slid it across the table. "Use this. It's clean. Can't be traced." Serena picked it up. The screen was blank, anonymous, the kind of phone people used when they didn't want records. She walked out of the dining room, through hallways, upstairs, back to her room, closed the door and locked it, even though she knew locks didn't mean anything in this house. Then she sat on the bed and stared at the phone. Her mother, the woman who'd raised her, who'd lied to her, who'd helped murder Lucien's father for $50,000 and then spent 23 years pretending to be someone else. Serena's hands shook as she dialed the number she'd known by heart since she was 5 years old. It rang twice. "Hello?" Her mother's voice sounded small, scared, like she'd been waiting for this call and dreading it at the same time. "Mom, it's me." A sob, sharp and broken. "Oh, God. Serena, are you okay? Are you hurt? Did he—" "I'm fine." The lie tasted bitter. "I need to ask you something." "Anything, baby, anything." Serena closed her eyes, forced the words out. "Where's Elena?" The line went silent. Not the silence of a bad connection, the silence of someone who just had their worst fear confirmed. "I don't know what you're—" "Don't lie to me." Serena's voice cracked. "Not anymore. I know everything. I know about the $50,000. I know about Giovanni Russo. I know you helped them kill Lucien's father, so please, for once in your life, just tell me the truth. Where is Elena?" Her mother's breathing came in ragged gasps, like she was drowning. Who told you? Lucien has proof, photos, evidence. He knows everything. Serena's chest ached, and he's going to kill you if you don't give him what he wants. So please, Mom, where is she? "I can't." Her mother's voice broke completely. "If I tell you, they'll kill her." "Who's they?" "The Russos. Giovanni has people watching her, has had them watching her for 15 years. She's alive, but she's not free. She's in a prison without walls. And if I tell you where she is, if Lucien goes after her, they'll know. They'll kill her before he gets there." Serena's mind spun. Why would the Russos keep Elena alive? Because she saw everything that night. She was supposed to die with Lucien's father, but she ran, got away. Giovanni's been trying to find her ever since. He finally did about 10 years ago. Instead of killing her, he decided to use her as insurance. As long as she's alive and hidden, the Devereux family can't touch him without risking her death. That doesn't make sense. Lucien didn't even know she was alive until I showed up. Exactly. Her mother's voice was hollow. Giovanni made sure he didn't know, spread rumors that she was dead, kept her hidden. Because as long as Lucien thought she was gone, he'd keep hunting, keep destabilizing himself, keep making mistakes. Elena was the perfect weapon, a ghost he'd never stop chasing. Serena pressed her free hand against her mouth, tried to keep from screaming. This was worse than she'd imagined, so much worse. "Where is she?" Serena whispered. Her mother was crying now, full sobs. "I can't tell you, I can't. She's my family, she's all I have left of. I'm your family." The words exploded out of Serena. "I'm your daughter, and I'm trapped in a house with a man who wants to kill you for what you did. So you're going to tell me where Elena is, and then you're going to pray that Lucien decides your information is worth keeping you alive." Silence. Then, so quietly, Serena almost missed it. "France. She's in France. A small village called Saint-Michel-sur-Loire, about 2 hours south of Paris. Giovanni has 2 men watching her. She lives under a different name, works at a bakery. She doesn't know I know where she is, doesn't know I've been keeping track, but I have. Because she's the only family I have left who isn't—" She stopped, didn't say who isn't ruined by what I did, didn't have to. Serena's throat burned. "Thank you." "Serena, wait. I have to go. Please. Please tell me you'll be careful. Tell me you'll—" Serena ended the call. She sat on the bed staring at the phone. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Her chest felt like someone had reached inside and squeezed her heart until it stopped working. Her mother had been tracking Elena for years, keeping tabs on the woman whose life she'd helped destroy. Watching from a distance like that might somehow make up for the betrayal. It didn't. Nothing could. Serena stood up, unlocked the door, walked back through the house to the dining room where Lucien was still sitting. He looked up when she entered. His gray eyes were sharp despite the exhaustion. "Well," he said. "France, a village called Saint-Michel-sur-Loire, 2 hours south of Paris. She's alive. The Russos have been watching her for 10 years, using her as insurance against you." Lucien went very still. "How?" Serena explained everything. The blackmail, the surveillance, the reason Giovanni Russo had kept Elena alive instead of killing her. Every word felt like swallowing glass. When she finished, Lucien sat back in his chair. His expression was unreadable. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. "Book a flight to Paris, private jet. We leave in 3 hours." He paused. "And get me everything we have on Saint-Michel-sur-Loire. I want maps, surveillance, guard positions, everything." He ended the call and looked at Serena. "You're coming with me," he said. "What?" "You heard me. You're coming to France." "Why?" "Because if this is a trap, if your mother lied, or if the Russos are using you to lure me out, I want you where I can see you." His eyes were hard. "And because Elena might not trust me, but she might trust someone who looks like her." Serena's stomach dropped. "I'm not going to help you kidnap her. I'm not kidnapping her, I'm rescuing her." He stood up. "Elena has been a prisoner for 10 years, living in fear, watching her back, probably wishing she was dead. I'm going to give her a choice. Come with me and testify against the Russos, or stay hidden and die when Giovanni decides she's not useful anymore. And if she doesn't want either option, then I'll give her a third one." His voice softened slightly. "I'll give her enough money to disappear properly. New identity, new life. Somewhere the Russos will never find her. All she has to do is tell me everything she knows about the night my father died." It wasn't mercy, but it was closer than Serena expected. "I need to pack," she said quietly. "Margot already did. You leave in 2 hours." He walked past her toward the door, stopped, looked back. "Your mother," he said. "I'm not going to kill her. Not yet. But she stays under surveillance. If she contacts the Russos, if she warns them, she's dead. Make sure she understands that." Then he was gone. Serena stood alone in the dining room with her heart hammering and the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. She was going to France, to find a woman who'd been hiding for 15 years, to help the man who wanted revenge for his father's murder, to stand in the middle of a war she didn't start and couldn't stop. And somewhere deep in her chest, beneath all the fear and anger and exhaustion, a thought crystallized. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was choosing to stay when she could run, choosing to help when she could refuse, choosing Lucien even though he terrified her, even though he represented everything that had destroyed her family. Because Margot was right. Loyalty was the only thing in this world that meant anything, and Serena had just chosen her side too. The flight to Paris took 9 hours. Serena spent most of it staring out the window at darkness broken only by distant lights from cities below. Lucien sat across from her working on his laptop. His fingers flew across the keyboard. His eyes never left the screen. He looked like a man possessed. Margot was there too, silent, watchful, sitting near the back of the jet with a gun on her hip and her pale eyes tracking everything. They landed at a private airfield outside Paris just after dawn. 3 black SUVs were waiting. Armed men loaded luggage and weapons with the kind of efficiency that came from doing this too many times. Lucien pulled Serena aside before they got in the vehicles. "When we get to the village, you stay in the car until I say otherwise. If shooting starts, you get down and you stay down. If I tell you to run, you run. Understood?" Serena nodded. His jaw tightened. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was so unexpected it made her breath catch. "I'm trying to keep you alive," he said quietly. "Try to help me." Then he walked away. They drove for 2 hours through French countryside that looked like something from a painting. Rolling hills, small farms, villages with stone buildings and cobblestone streets. It would have been beautiful if Serena wasn't so terrified she could barely breathe. Finally, they reached Saint-Michel-sur-Loire. It was smaller than she expected, maybe 200 people, one main street lined with shops, a bakery, a cafe, a small market, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone and strangers stood out. Lucien's convoy stood out like blood on snow. They parked on the outskirts. Lucien pulled out his phone and studied something on the screen. A map, maybe. Or surveillance photos. "The bakery," he said. "She works there 4 days a week. Opens at 6, closes at 2. It was almost noon. "What's the plan?" the scarred man asked from the driver's seat. "We go in quiet. No guns visible. No confrontation." Lucien's voice was calm, controlled. "I talked to her. Confirm identity. Make the offer. If she agrees, we leave. If she doesn't, we leave anyway and figure out plan B." "And the Russo surveillance?" 2 men, one in the cafe across the street, one in a car parked 3 blocks east. "We take them out first." He looked at Margot. Clean, quiet, no witnesses. Margot nodded and slipped out of the SUV. Serena watched her walk down the street like a tourist. Casual, unhurried. She entered the cafe. 3 minutes later, she walked out, kept moving, disappeared around a corner. Lucien's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. "Cafe's clear. Car's next." 5 minutes passed. The phone buzzed again. "Done," Lucien said. "Let's move." He got out of the SUV. Serena followed. Her legs felt like water. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might crack a rib. They walked down the main street. Lucien beside her. 2 of his men 20 feet behind, casual, like they were tourists visiting a charming French village. But Serena could feel the tension, could see the way Lucien's hand stayed near his jacket where she knew he kept a gun. Could see the way his eyes tracked everything, windows, doors, people, escape routes. The bakery was small, warm yellow paint, window boxes with flowers. A sign in French that Serena couldn't read. Lucien opened the door. A bell chimed. Inside smelled like bread and sugar and coffee. Display cases lined one wall showing pastries and cakes. A few small tables sat near the window, and behind the counter, wearing an apron dusted with flour, was a woman who made Serena's breath stop. Elena. She was older than in the photos, mid-40s now, lines around her eyes, gray streaking through her dark hair. But her face was the same face Serena saw in the mirror, the same eyes, the same mouth. Elena looked up when they entered, started to smile. The smile froze when she saw Lucien. The color drained from her face. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then Elena whispered one word. "No." Lucien stepped forward, slow, careful, like approaching a wounded animal. "Elena, I'm not here to hurt you." "You shouldn't be here." Her voice shook. Her hands gripped the edge of the counter. You need to leave. Right now, before they... The Russo surveillance is gone. You're safe. For now. Elena's eyes went wide. You killed them. Yes. Then more will come. They always come. She looked past him toward the door, panic rising in her voice. You have to go. If Giovanni finds out you were here, if he thinks I told you anything, he's going to kill you anyway. Lucien's voice was quiet, firm. Eventually, when you stop being useful, you know that. Elena's face crumpled. She pressed her hands against her mouth. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I'm offering you a way out, Lucien said. Come with me. Tell me everything you know about the night my father died. Help me end the Russos. And I'll give you your life back. I don't have a life to go back to. Elena's voice broke. I gave that up 15 years ago when I ran. Then start a new one. With what? With who? She laughed, a bitter, broken sound. Everyone I loved is dead or thinks I'm dead. I'm a ghost, Lucien, and ghosts don't get second chances. Serena stepped forward before she could stop herself. Elena's eyes snapped to her, widened. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. You're not a ghost, Serena said quietly. You're my family, my mother's cousin, my blood. And I'm here to tell you that running didn't save you. It just delayed the inevitable. So you can either keep hiding until Giovanni decides you're not worth the effort, or you can fight back. Elena stared at her, tears still streaming down her face. Who are you? I'm Serena Vale, your cousin's daughter. And I look like you because we're family. Because the same blood that made you run is the blood that brought me here. She paused. And I'm telling you that Lucien isn't the enemy. He's the only chance you have left. Silence. The bell on the door chimed. Everyone turned. A man stood in the doorway. Tall, broad, wearing a jacket that didn't quite hide the gun underneath. His eyes swept the bakery, landed on Lucien, went cold. Devereux, he said. His accent was Italian. His voice was ice. Giovanni sends his regards. Then he reached for his gun. Lucien moved first. He pulled his weapon and fired in the same motion. The shot was deafening in the small space. The man's head snapped back. Blood sprayed across the yellow paint. He dropped. Serena screamed. Outside, more men appeared. 3, 4, guns out, moving fast. Back door! Lucien shouted. He grabbed Elena's arm and dragged her from behind the counter. Move! The front window exploded. Glass shattered inward. Bullets tore through display cases. Pastries and bread erupted in clouds of flour and sugar. Serena dropped to the floor. Her ears rang. Her vision blurred. Lucien fired through the broken window. Once, twice. Someone outside screamed. Serena! His voice cut through the chaos. Back door, now! She scrambled to her feet. Glass cut through her palms. She didn't feel it, just ran toward the back of the bakery where Elena was already disappearing through a door. Lucien fired 3 more times, then he was running too. They burst into an alley, narrow, cobblestone, lined with trash bins and motorcycles. This way. Lucien grabbed Serena's hand and pulled her left. Elena ran beside them. Her apron was covered in flour. Her face was sheet white. Gunfire erupted behind them. Bullets sparked off stone. One hit a motorcycle and it exploded. Heat and pressure slammed into Serena's back. She stumbled. Lucien caught her, kept pulling her forward. They reached the end of the alley. The street beyond was crowded, people screaming, running, chaos spreading like fire. One of the black SUVs screeched around the corner. Margot was driving. She slammed to a stop and the back door flew open. In! Lucien shoved Elena inside. Then Serena. He dove in after them and Margot floored it before the door even closed. More gunfire. The back window shattered. Serena threw herself flat across the seat. Elena was beside her, sobbing, hands over her head. Lucien leaned out the broken window and returned fire. His face was splattered with blood. Not his, someone else's. His eyes were wild. He looked like a man who'd been born in violence and would die in it too. How many? Margot shouted from the front. At least 8, maybe more. Lucien reloaded. The whole Russo family must have come. They knew we were coming. Someone tipped them off. Serena's stomach dropped. Her mother. Her mother must have... No, she wouldn't. She couldn't have. But the doubt was there. poisonous and sharp. They screamed through the village, people dove out of the way. More SUVs appeared behind them, black, fast, guns bristling from windows. "Hold on!" Margot yanked the wheel. The SUV skidded around a corner. Tires screamed. They crashed through a flower stand. Petals exploded across the windshield. Then they were on the highway. Open road, trees blurring past. Lucien pulled back inside and slammed a fresh magazine into his gun. "Call for backup. Get every man we have in France to the airfield. We need to be in the air in 20 minutes or we're dead." Margot was already on the phone. Speaking rapid French, her voice was calm despite the chaos. Serena sat up slowly. Her entire body shook. Blood dripped from her cut palms onto the leather seat. She looked at Elena. The older woman was curled against the door, eyes wide, face pale as death. "I'm sorry," Elena whispered. "I'm so sorry. I should have died that night. I should have—" "Shut up," Lucien said. "Not cruel, just exhausted. You're alive, that's what matters. Now tell me who else knew you were here? Who else knew about this location?" Elena shook her head. "Nobody. Just your family and mine. And the Russos." "Then how did they know I was coming?" "I don't know." Lucien's jaw tightened. He looked at Serena, and in his eyes she saw the question he didn't want to ask. "It wasn't my mother," Serena said. Her voice shook. "She wouldn't—" "Are you sure?" "Yes." But she wasn't. Not anymore. The highway stretched ahead of them. The SUVs behind were gaining. Serena could see muzzle flashes in the side mirror. 10 minutes to the airfield," Margot said. "The plane is ready, but we need to lose them first or we'll lead them straight to it." "I have an idea." Lucien leaned forward. "Take the next exit. There's a construction site half a mile east. We lose them there." "That's a kill box." "I know." Margot's pale eyes met his in the rearview mirror. Something passed between them. Understanding, trust, the kind that came from years of choosing each other over survival. "Okay," she said. She took the exit going 90. The SUV nearly tipped. Serena slammed against the door. Elena screamed. They roared down a dirt road. Dust exploded around them. Trees gave way to open space, and there, rising against the gray sky, was a half-finished building. Steel beams, concrete floors, construction equipment scattered like toys. Margot drove straight into it. They crashed through temporary fencing, skidded across gravel, slammed to a stop behind a concrete barrier. "Out!" Lucien kicked open the door and dragged Elena with him. "Serena, stay low. Don't move unless I tell you to." She didn't argue, just pressed herself against the concrete and tried to remember how to breathe. The Russo SUVs arrived seconds later. Doors flew open. Men poured out. 10, 12, more, all armed, all moving with the precision of soldiers who'd done this before. Lucien and his men took positions behind barriers and equipment, guns out, ready. For 3 seconds, everything was silent. Then, hell broke loose. Gunfire erupted from every direction. The sound was deafening. Bullets tore through metal and concrete. Sparks flew. Dust exploded into clouds that made it impossible to see. Serena covered her head with her arms and tried to make herself smaller. Beside her, Elena was praying in French, rapid words that blurred together. Lucien moved through the chaos like death incarnate, precise, cold. Every shot found a target, every movement calculated. He wasn't fighting to survive, he was fighting to destroy. And Serena realized with cold certainty, this was who he really was. Not the man who played piano at midnight, not the man who'd looked at her like she might be an answer. This, a killer born from bloodshed, a king built on violence, and she'd chosen to stand beside him. One of Lucien's men went down, shot in the chest. He didn't get back up. Margot was firing from behind a steel beam. Her face was empty, mechanical. She moved like a machine designed only for war. The Russo men kept coming, kept advancing. Too many of them, not enough cover. Lucien fell back, reloading. His eyes found Serena across the chaos. "Run!" he shouted. "When I say go, you run for the tree line. Don't stop. Don't look back. Margot will." The explosion cut him off. One of the SUVs erupted in fire and shrapnel. The blast wave knocked Serena flat. Her ears rang. Her vision whited out. She couldn't hear, couldn't see, couldn't think. Then hands grabbed her, pulled her up. "Lucien, His mouth was moving, shouting something. She couldn't hear the words. He dragged her toward the trees. Elena stumbled beside them. Margot covered their retreat, firing until her gun clicked empty, then pulling a knife and moving in close. They reached the tree line. Behind them, the construction site was a war zone. Fire, smoke, bodies. The kind of scene that would make international news and spark investigations that would go nowhere. Lucien pulled out his phone, made a call, shouted coordinates. 5 minutes later, a helicopter appeared over the trees. It landed in a clearing 50 yards away. The rotors kicked up dirt and leaves. The noise was overwhelming. They ran. Serena's legs burned, her lungs screamed, blood from her cut palms smeared across everything she touched. They reached the helicopter. Lucien shoved Elena inside. Then Serena. He climbed in last with Margot right behind him. The helicopter lifted off before the door even closed. Serena pressed her face against the window and watched the construction site shrink below them. Watched smoke rise into the gray sky. Watched the place where she'd almost died disappear into distance. Beside her, Elena sobbed. Lucien sat with his head in his hands. Blood dripped from a cut on his forehead. His shirt was torn. His hands shook. "How many did we lose?" he asked without looking up. "3," Margot said quietly, "plus 2 wounded." He nodded. Didn't say anything else. Just sat there looking like a man who'd lost a war he couldn't afford to lose. Serena reached out, touched his arm. He looked at her. His gray eyes were hollow. "We made it," she said. "For now. That's all we have." His hand covered hers, squeezed once, then let go. The helicopter carried them toward the horizon, toward the waiting plane, toward whatever came next. And in that moment, sitting beside a man covered in blood and a woman who'd been running for 15 years, Serena understood. This was war, real war, the kind that didn't end until everyone was dead or everyone surrendered, and they were nowhere near the end. The plane touched down at a private airfield outside the city just as the sun was setting. Red and gold bleeding across the horizon like the sky was on fire. Serena watched through the window and thought about how many sunsets she'd seen in the last 2 weeks, each one marking another day she'd survived, another day closer to whatever ending this story was careening toward. They'd been in the air for 3 hours. Elena had finally stopped crying about an hour ago. Now she sat curled in her seat, staring at nothing, looking like someone who'd been hollowed out and forgotten how to be whole again. Margot had cleaned and bandaged Lucien's head wound without speaking. The cut wasn't deep, but it had bled enough to make him look like he'd been through war, which he had, which they all had. Lucien hadn't said a word since they'd taken off, just sat with his eyes closed and his jaw tight, breathing through whatever pain or rage or grief was tearing him apart from the inside. When the plane finally stopped moving, he stood up slowly, like every muscle hurt, like he'd aged another decade in the 3 hours since France. "We go straight to the estate," he said. His voice was rough, exhausted. "No stops, no distractions. The Russos know we have Elena now. They're going to come for us with everything they have left." "How long do we have?" Margot asked. "Maybe a day, maybe less." He looked at Elena. "You're going to tell me everything you know about the night my father died. Every detail, every person, every word, and then you're going to help me end this." Elena's eyes were red, swollen, but when she looked at him, there was something harder underneath the tears. Something that had survived 15 years of hiding and was finally ready to fight back. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll tell you everything." They drove back to the estate in silence. The convoy moved through the city like a funeral procession. Black cars with tinted windows, armed men scanning every corner, the weight of violence hanging over everything like storm clouds that wouldn't break. Serena sat beside Lucien in the back of the SUV. Their shoulders touched. Neither of them moved away. She could feel the heat radiating off him, could hear his breathing, too fast, too shallow, like he was barely holding himself together. She wanted to say something, wanted to tell him it would be okay, but she didn't know if that was true. Didn't know if anything would ever be okay again, so she just sat there, close enough to matter, far enough to let him break if he needed to. By the time they reached the estate, full dark had fallen. The fortress looked even more imposing at night. Floodlights cutting through the darkness, guards positioned on every wall. The ocean below invisible except for the sound of waves crashing against rocks like the world was trying to tear itself apart. Inside, the house felt different, colder, emptier, like it knew what was coming and was bracing for impact. Lucien led Elena to his study. Margot followed. Serena started to go with them, but Lucien stopped her. "Not yet," he said. "I need to hear this alone first. I'll call you when—" He stopped. His jaw worked. "Just give me an hour." Serena nodded. She watched him disappear down the hallway with Elena and Margot, watched the study door close, heard the lock click into place. Then she was alone. She walked through the house without knowing where she was going. Just needed to move. Needed to do something other than stand still and wait for the world to end. She found herself in the music room. The grand piano sat silent in the dim light. She crossed to it and pressed one key. The note hung in the air. Lonely. Unfinished. She thought about Lucien playing at 3 in the morning. Thought about the grief in every note. Thought about how he'd spent 15 years hunting ghosts and now he'd finally caught one. She wondered if it would be enough. Wondered if revenge ever was. Footsteps behind her. She turned. Lucien stood in the doorway. His face was unreadable. But his eyes looked like someone had shown him hell and made him memorize every detail. "It was supposed to be me," he said quietly. Serena's breath caught. "What?" "That night, the meeting, I was supposed to go with my father, but Elena asked me to help her with wedding planning, so I stayed. And he went alone." His voice cracked. "He died because I chose flowers over family. That's not, you can't blame yourself for—" "I blamed Elena for 15 years. He stepped into the room. "I thought she'd set him up. Thought she was part of the conspiracy. Spent every day hating her for running, for not being there, for surviving when he didn't." He stopped a few feet away from Serena, close enough that she could see the exhaustion carved into every line of his face, close enough to see the way his hand shook. "But she didn't know," he said. "She loved him, really loved him. And that night she was at home planning a wedding that would never happen while your mother fed information to Giovanni Russo about where my father would be and when he'd be alone." Serena felt like she'd been punched. "Did Elena tell you that? That my mother is whom—" She confirmed it. Said your mother introduced them, set up their first meeting, played matchmaker. Your mother knew my father's schedule, knew his security protocols, knew everything because Elena trusted her. His gray eyes burned. And she sold that trust for $50,000. The words hung in the air like smoke. Serena wanted to defend her mother, wanted to say it wasn't that simple, wanted to explain desperation and debt and impossible choices. But she couldn't, because it was that simple. Her mother had betrayed people who trusted her, had gotten a man killed, had destroyed lives for money, and Serena was paying the price. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Lucien was silent for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Bring her in," he said. Then he ended the call and looked at Serena. "Your mother is here, has been for the last 6 hours. I had my men pick her up when we were over the Atlantic. I need her to face Elena. Need them both in the same room. Need to see if your mother can look at what she destroyed and still pretend she had no choice." Serena's stomach dropped. "You can't... She'll what? Die of guilt?" His voice was ice. "Good. Maybe she should. She's my mother. She's a traitor." He moved toward the door, stopped, looked back. "You can come if you want, or you can stay here. But either way, this conversation is happening." He left. Serena stood in the music room with her heart hammering and her mind spinning. She should stay, should let them tear each other apart without her, should protect herself from whatever horrors were about to unfold. But she couldn't, because loyalty meant showing up even when it hurt, even when it destroyed you. So she followed him. They gathered in the dining room, the same long table where Serena had eaten breakfast her first morning in this house, where she'd sat across from Lucien and wondered if she'd survive the day. Now her mother sat at one end of the table, hands zip-tied in front of her, face pale, eyes red from crying. 2 guards stood behind her, silent, watchful. Elena sat at the other end, Margot beside her. The older woman looked smaller than she had in France, more fragile, like the weight of 15 years had finally caught up to her all at once. Lucien stood near the windows, arms crossed, face carved from stone, and Serena stood near the door, trapped between the two women who'd shaped her life without her knowing, trapped between blood and choice, trapped between who she'd been and who she was becoming. "Marie?" Elena's voice broke the silence. Quiet. Shaking. "Is it really you?" Serena's mother looked up, saw Elena, and something in her face shattered completely. "Oh, God," she whispered. "Oh, God. Elena, I'm so sorry. You sold me out." Elena's voice was still quiet, but there was steel underneath now. "You introduced me to the man I loved. Let me trust you. Let me tell you everything. And then you gave that information to the people who killed him. I didn't know what they were going to do. I swear I didn't know. Giovanni said it was just business, just information. He said no one would get hurt." "And you believed him?" Elena's laugh was bitter. "Or did you just take the money and tell yourself it wasn't your fault?" Serena's mother flinched like she'd been slapped. "I had debts. My husband was drowning us. We were going to lose everything. I had a daughter to feed. I didn't have a choice." "Everyone has a choice." This came from Lucien. His voice was quiet, deadly. "You chose money over loyalty, chose yourself over the people who trusted you, and my father died because of it." He moved to the table, slow, deliberate, stopped behind Serena's mother and leaned down so his mouth was near her ear. "Tell me," he said quietly, "was it worth it?" Serena's mother was crying now, full sobs that shook her whole body. No, it wasn't worth it. Not for a single day. I've lived with what I did for 23 years. I see his face every time I close my eyes. I hear Elena's voice when she called me that night begging me to tell her it wasn't real. I know what I did. I know I'm a monster." "Then why did you do it again?" Serena's voice cut across the room, sharp, cold. She barely recognized it as her own. "Why did you tell the Russos we were going to France?" Her mother's head snapped up. "What? I would never—" "Someone told them. Someone tipped them off that we were coming for Elena, and the only person who knew besides us was you." "It wasn't me." Her mother's voice rose, desperate. "I swear on your life, Serena, it wasn't me. I haven't spoken to Giovanni in 15 years. I couldn't. Then who?" Lucien's voice was ice. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. Then Margot spoke. "It was me." Every head in the room turned. Margot stood near the wall. Her pale eyes were empty. Her silver hair perfect. Her face showed nothing. "I told them," she said calmly. "Called Giovanni 3 hours after we left for France. Told him exactly where we were going and when we'd arrive." Lucien went very still. His face drained of color. "What did you say?" "You heard me." Margot's voice was steady, almost gentle. "I've been feeding information to the Russos for 10 years. Ever since Giovanni approached me with proof that you'd killed his brother. Ever since he threatened to expose everything unless I helped him destroy you from the inside." The room spun. Serena grabbed the edge of the table to keep from falling. This couldn't be real. Margot had been loyal, had trained her, had told her that loyalty was the only thing that mattered in this world, had lied about all of it. Lucien's hand moved to his gun, pulled it, aimed it at Margot's head. His hand didn't shake. His eyes were empty. "Give me one reason," he said quietly, "why I shouldn't kill you right now." "Because I'm the only one who knows where Giovanni is hiding." Margot's expression didn't change. "Kill me and you'll never find him. Let me live and I'll give you everything. His location, his security, his entire operation laid out like a map. One phone call and you can end this war tonight." "Why?" The word came out broken. "Why would you betray me? After everything, after 15 years?" "Because you were going to get yourself killed." For the first time, emotion cracked through Margot's mask. Pain, raw and deep. "You were so obsessed with revenge that you couldn't see the trap you were walking into. Giovanni wasn't just coming after your empire. He was coming after you, personally, and I couldn't—" Her voice broke. "I couldn't watch you die the same way your father did." Lucien's jaw tightened. "So you sold me out to save me?" "I fed him information that wouldn't hurt you, gave him targets that didn't matter, kept him distracted while I figured out how to end him without getting you killed in the process. She paused. But then Elena showed up, and you saw a chance to close this chapter, to finally get answers. And I knew Giovanni would use that against you, would set a trap in France, would try to kill you there. So you told him we were coming. I told him you were coming so he'd commit everything he had, so he'd empty his defenses here to focus on France. So when you came back, if you came back, you'd have a clear shot at ending him once and for all. The gun in Lucien's hand wavered, just slightly, just enough to show the cracks underneath. You played both sides, he said. I played the only side that mattered. Yours. Margot's pale eyes held his. I've spent 10 years keeping you alive, keeping this empire running, keeping the Russos at bay. And I'd do it again. Every betrayal, every lie, every piece of information I fed them to keep them from destroying you completely. I'd do all of it again if it meant you survived. Silence. The gun lowered, slowly. Lucien's hand shook now. His chest heaved. He looked like a man who'd been holding up the world and just realized how heavy it was. Where is he? Lucien's voice was barely a whisper. Where's Giovanni? Margot pulled out her phone, sent a text. The phone on the table buzzed. Lucien picked it up, read whatever was on the screen. His face went hard. He's at the docks, Margot said. Warehouse district. Same place your father died. He's been using it as a base for the last 6 months. Thinks you don't know. Thinks he's safe there. How many men? 20, maybe 30? All armed, all loyal. She paused. It's a fortress. You go in there alone, you die. Then I don't go alone. Lucien looked at the scarred man standing near the door. Call everyone. Every man we have in the city. Every weapon we can carry. We move in 1 hour. The scarred man nodded and left. Lucien turned back to Margot. His gray eyes were burning. When this is over, if I survive, we're going to have a conversation about loyalty and lies and whether I can ever trust you again. I know, Margot said quietly, but right now I need you. So you're coming with me. And if you try to run or warn Giovanni or do anything except help me end him, I will put a bullet in your head myself. Understood? Understood. He moved toward the door, stopped, looked at Serena. Stay here, he said. Lock yourself in your room. Don't open the door for anyone except me. This ends tonight, one way or another. Serena's throat tightened. Let me come with you. No. I can help. You can die. His voice cracked. And I won't. He stopped, took a breath. Just stay here, please. That's all I'm asking. The please broke something in her chest. She nodded. He looked at her for one more second, like he was memorizing her face, like he thought he might never see it again. Then he was gone. Serena stayed for 10 minutes, sat in the dining room with her mother still zip-tied at the table, and Elena sitting in silence and the weight of everything crushing down on her shoulders. Then she stood up. Where are you going? Her mother asked. To finish this. Serena looked at the guards. Let her go. Miss, we can't. Let her go. Command in her voice surprised even her. She's not going anywhere. She has nowhere left to run. So cut her loose and get her some water and let her sit here and think about what she's done while the rest of us go fight her war for her. The guards looked at each other. Then one of them pulled out a knife and cut the zip ties. Serena's mother rubbed her wrists. Thank you. I didn't do it for you. Serena turned toward the door. I did it because holding you prisoner won't change the past, won't bring anyone back, won't fix anything. She left before her mother could respond. Found Margot in the armory loading weapons into a duffel bag. The older woman looked up when Serena entered. You should be in your room, Margot said. I'm coming with you. No, you're not. Yes, I am. Serena grabbed a vest from the rack, started putting it on. You said I needed to learn how to fight. You said loyalty meant showing up even when it hurt. Well, I'm showing up. Margot stared at her for a long moment. Then something like approval crossed her face. You know you might die tonight. I know. And you're choosing to come anyway. Yes. Margot handed her a gun. Then let's make sure you know how to use this. They spent 15 minutes going over basics. How to hold it, how to aim, how to fire without the recoil breaking her wrist. It wasn't enough. Serena knew it wasn't enough, but it was better than nothing. By the time they finished, the convoy was ready. 6 SUVs, 30 men, enough weapons to start a small war. Lucien stood near the lead vehicle talking to his lieutenants. When he saw Serena approaching, he froze. "What are you doing?" His voice was tight. "Coming with you." "Like hell you are." "You don't get to make that choice for me." She stepped closer, close enough to see the fear in his eyes underneath the anger. "I've spent 2 weeks being dragged through your war, being used as a puzzle piece, being protected like I'm something fragile that might break. But I'm not fragile, and I'm done letting other people fight battles that are as much mine as theirs. Your mother started this, not you. My mother started it, but I'm the one living with the consequences, so I'm going to finish it." She held up the gun Margot had given her. "And if you try to stop me, I'll shoot you in the foot and go anyway." Lucien stared at her. His jaw worked. His hands curled into fists. For 3 seconds, she thought he might actually lock her in the house. Then his mouth almost smiled. Almost. "You're insane. I learned from the best." He shook his head, turned to Margot. "Keep her alive. That's an order." "Yes, sir." They got in the vehicles. Serena sat between Margot and the scarred man whose name she still didn't know. Lucien was in the front seat, silent, focused, looking like a man preparing to walk into his own funeral. The convoy moved through the city. No sirens, no lights, just black cars gliding through streets that emptied as they passed. People knew. Somehow they always knew. When violence was coming, when the monsters were moving. The warehouse district looked different at night, all shadows and rust and the smell of salt water and decay. The same place Lucien's father had died 15 years ago. The same place this whole nightmare had started. Now it would end here. The convoy stopped 2 blocks away. Lucien gathered everyone in a tight circle. "Giovanni is inside with at least 20 men," he said. His voice was calm, controlled. "We go in fast. We go in hard. We take down anyone who gets in the way. But Giovanni is mine. Nobody touches him except me. Clear?" Murmurs of agreement. "And if I go down," Lucien paused. "If I go down, you get Serena out. That's the priority. Not me, not revenge. Her. Understood?" More murmurs. Serena's chest tightened. She wanted to argue, wanted to say that wasn't necessary, but the look in his eyes stopped her. This wasn't negotiable. This was him trying to protect the one thing he thought might survive this night. They moved toward the warehouse, silent, quick. Margot had Serena's arm, kept her close, kept her low. The building loomed ahead. Old brick, broken windows, a door hanging off its hinges. The kind of place that had seen too much violence and stopped caring. Lucien raised his hand. Everyone stopped. He pointed. 4 men peeled off and moved around the side. 4 more went the opposite direction. The rest stayed with Lucien near the main entrance. Serena's heart hammered so hard she thought it might crack a rib. Her palms were slick with sweat. The gun felt heavy in her hands. Lucien looked back at her, held her eyes, mouthed 2 words, "Stay alive." Then he kicked open the door and hell broke loose. Gunfire erupted immediately. Muzzle flashes lit up the darkness like lightning. Serena pressed herself against the wall and tried to remember how to breathe. Men shouted, screamed, fell. The sound was deafening, overwhelming, the kind of chaos you couldn't think through, could only survive. Margot pulled her forward, into the building, through smoke and noise and the smell of blood and gunpowder. Bodies on the ground, some moving, some not. Serena's stomach lurched, but she kept moving because stopping meant dying. They pushed deeper into the warehouse, more gunfire, more shouting. Lucien was ahead of them somewhere, moving like death, taking down anyone in his path. Then they reached the center of the building, a wide-open space, rusted machinery, old crates, and standing near the far wall with a gun in his hand was a man Serena recognized from photos. Giovanni Russo, older now, gray hair, heavy, but the same cold eyes, the same face that had ordered the murder of Lucien's father. Lucien stopped 20 feet away, gun raised, breathing hard. "It's over, Giovanni," he said. Giovanni smiled, blood on his teeth. "Is it? Your men are dead. Your empire is burning. You have nothing left." "I have this," Giovanni raised his gun, aimed it not at Lucien, at Serena. Everything slowed down. Serena saw Lucien's face change, saw the gray in his eyes turn to pure terror, saw him move, saw his mouth open to shout something, saw Giovanni's finger tighten on the trigger. Then Margot stepped in front of her. The shot was deafening. Margot staggered. Blood bloomed across her chest. She looked down at it, then at Serena. Her pale eyes were calm. "Loyalty," she whispered. Then she fell. Lucien fired. Once, twice, 3 times. Each shot found Giovanni, chest, throat, head. The older man dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Silence. The gunfire outside had stopped. The warehouse was quiet except for the sound of Serena's ragged breathing and Lucien's footsteps as he ran to Margot. He dropped to his knees beside her, pressed his hands against the wound. Blood poured between his fingers. "No," he said. "No, no, no. Margot, stay with me. Stay." "It's okay." Margot's voice was weak, fading. "I told you. I chose you. Every time. You don't get to die." Tears streamed down Lucien's face. "You don't get to. You're supposed to." "I'm supposed to make sure you survive." Her hand found his, squeezed weakly. "Did I?" "Yes." "Good." Her eyes slid to Serena. "Take care of him. He's terrible at taking care of himself." Serena nodded. She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Margot's eyes closed. Her hand went limp. The woman who'd spent 10 years keeping Lucien alive was gone. Lucien sat there holding her. His whole body shook. The sound that came out of him was something between a scream and a sob, the sound of a man breaking completely. Serena sank to the ground beside him, put her arms around him, held him while he fell apart, while the empire he'd built finally crumbled, while the ghosts he'd been chasing for 15 years were finally laid to rest. They stayed like that until the sirens came, until more of Lucien's men found them, until someone gently pulled them apart and led them outside into the cold air and the flashing lights. The war was over, but the cost had been everything. Epilogue. 6 months later. The estate looked different in summer, less like a fortress and more like a home. Gardens bloomed along the pathways. Windows stayed open to let in ocean breeze. The walls that had once felt like prison bars now just felt like walls. Serena stood in the music room watching Lucien play. He'd been playing a lot lately. Not the sad pieces, new ones. Original compositions he wrote at 3 in the morning when sleep wouldn't come. This one sounded like hope. Tentative. Fragile. But hope nonetheless. Elena had testified against the remaining Russo family. Spent 3 weeks in protective custody, telling prosecutors everything she knew. The organization had fallen apart after Giovanni's death. His lieutenants turned on each other. The empire collapsed in weeks. Elena had taken the money Lucien offered her and disappeared. Mexico, someone said. Or maybe Costa Rica. Somewhere warm where she could finally stop running. Serena's mother had visited once. They'd sat in the garden for 2 hours, not saying much. Serena had forgiven her eventually. Not because what she'd done was forgivable, but because holding on to anger was exhausting and Serena was tired of being angry. Her mother had cried, said she was sorry, said it over and over like the words might eventually mean something. Then she'd left. Back to her apartment, back to her life, back to whatever guilt or peace she could find. Serena didn't know if she'd see her again, didn't know if she wanted to. Some wounds didn't heal just because you named them. The music stopped. Lucien turned on the bench and looked at her. The gray in his eyes was lighter now, still carrying weight, but not drowning in it. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think it's beautiful." "It's not finished yet." "The best things never are." He smiled, really smiled, the kind that reached his eyes and softened all the hard edges. "Come here," he said. She crossed the room and sat beside him on the bench. Their shoulders touched, the same way they had that first night when everything was still broken and neither of them knew if they'd survive until morning. "I need to tell you something," Lucien said. Serena's stomach clenched. "That sounds ominous." "It's not. I hope it's not." He took her hand. His palm was warm, calloused. The hand of someone who'd built and destroyed empires and was still figuring out how to be human. "I'm stepping back. From the business. From the empire. From all of it." She stared at him. What? I'm not leaving completely. Just delegating, letting other people run things while I figure out who I am without the crown. He paused. Margot died protecting me because I'd spent 15 years making enemies, because I'd built an empire on blood and fear, because I couldn't let go of revenge long enough to see what it was costing me. And I don't want to live like that anymore. What do you want? I want to play piano. I want to wake up without checking for assassins. I want to have breakfast without wondering which of my men might betray me. He squeezed her hand. I want to build a life with you that isn't defined by war. Serena's breath caught. Lucien, I know I don't deserve you. I know I've put you through hell. I know I'm probably going to make mistakes and hurt you without meaning to, and she kissed him, pressed her mouth against his, and poured everything she couldn't say into the kiss. All the fear and anger and exhaustion and hope. All the nights she'd thought she might not survive. All the moments she'd chosen to stay when running would have been easier. When she pulled back, his eyes were wet. I love you, he said. The words sounded like they'd been torn from somewhere deep. I don't know when it happened. Maybe when you stood up to me in the library, maybe when you followed me to France even though you were terrified. Maybe the moment I lifted your veil and saw your face and felt something crack open inside me. But I love you. And I'm done pretending I don't. Serena smiled, felt tears slide down her cheeks. I love you too. You terrifying, broken, impossible man. He laughed. The sound was rough, real, the kind of laugh that came from someone who'd forgotten how and was relearning. So what happens now? He asked. Now? Serena leaned her head against his shoulder. Now we figure out what living looks like, what normal looks like. What happens when the war is over and all you have left is the person beside you and the choice to keep choosing them? That sounds terrifying. It is. And you want to do it anyway? With you? She lifted her head and looked at him, at the man who dragged her into darkness and then fought beside her to find the light. Yes, with you. He kissed her again, soft, gentle, the kind of kiss that promised tomorrow instead of just tonight. Outside, the ocean crashed against the cliffs, the same way it had the night Serena first arrived, the same violent beauty, the same relentless rhythm, but this time it didn't sound like chaos. It sounded like home. And as Lucien pulled her closer and started playing a new melody with one hand while holding her with the other, Serena realized something extraordinary. She'd walked into this house a prisoner, a girl paying for her brother's sins and her mother's betrayals, a stranger trapped in someone else's nightmare. But she was leaving it as herself, someone who'd chosen loyalty over safety, love over survival, a future over a past she couldn't change. The wedding in the cathedral had been a cage built from debt and desperation. But this was freedom, and it was worth every scar it took to earn it.